We don't know. We do know that in the next 6 hours, we are not going to be able to call this race for presidency of the United States. True?
I think that's true, yes.
That's unfortunate.
Thanks, Arnon.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for your honesty.
Out that AP has also called Arizona.
I just said that, yeah. AP has confirmed the Arizona call.
Just quickly, a couple of Senate races that we're watching very closely. Susan Collins in Maine, you think we can pull that one up? That is a race where they're essentially, I think, punting for the morning and going to start again in a few hours on that. But Susan Collins leading, and the Republicans in the Senate, there it is. She's up 50.7, 89% of the precincts in. We mentioned John James in Michigan. We just talked about that one. But how about Georgia? There's the Michigan one. Georgia, the Perdue race. This is the incumbent, Senator Perdue. He is above the 50% threshold, and this is a big deal. If it's 94% in, if he gets above 50%, he's declared the winner and does not have to go to a runoff. And at that point, if the others hold, the GOP will officially hold on to the Senate. Tom Tillis, he's already declared victory. We have not declared victory for Tom Tillis in North Carolina, but he has already given a speech saying that he's won. I don't know if there's a concession from Cunningham, the Democrat, but again, that would be a big hold in North Carolina. He was considered vulnerable, Tillis was, to a loss.
Yeah, with 93% of the vote in. One of the interesting things to watch here when you look at these Senate races is how they reflect on President Trump, a real outlier.
Okay, let's go to Bill Hemmer, who's still here.
Yes.
With us. Oh, wait, yes?
Yeah, you know, there was a time at 3:30 in the morning there was actually something to do in this town.
Yeah, right.
That was
Not anymore.
Right.
This is it.
That's pre-COVID,
We're
right?
the best game in town. All right, what do you got?
That's all you got, right? I just checked in with the guys and the ladies down on the third floor. And, Brett, you were asking about Georgia. I know you just had Arnon on. Here's the catch now. In Georgia, you got 6% of the vote out, all right? I mean, it's surmountable. You know, you got 5 million votes cast here. Why can't you call it? There's a suggestion here that between Fulton County and DeKalb, Fulton County's Atlanta, east is DeKalb, there could be upwards of 200,000 votes still outstanding. Then if you throw in this county down here, Clayton County, perhaps there's a few more, and that's the reason why they're given hesitation as to make a final call here on Georgia. Maybe that changes to tonight. Maybe it takes 11 a.m. tomorrow morning to make a final call on that. With regard to North Carolina, the way the guys explain it to me is that the remaining 6% off of this 100% of 94, they're not quite sure where the vote is. You know, with mail-in voting now, mail-in balloting, it's a tricky deal. Here was your advance vote in North Carolina where we started the day. 4.5 million votes ballots had been turned in. And by the way, North Carolina, they started opening these ballots weeks ago and started processing, counting them earlier today. So we believe, well, if this number sticks, it's good for the president, 15 electoral votes, okay? Now, here's what I want to do, guys. I want to turn this whole argument around and move it 180 degrees, and I'll take you up to Michigan. You're at 73%. I've been crunching these numbers all night. Guys, Detroit's down here, Wayne County, still outstanding. Biden has a lead, but 4 years ago, Hillary Clinton was at 69%. Is African-American turnout that much lower in Detroit this year? If it is, if you go through these numbers here, it looks to me that Michigan looks a lot like it did in 2016, which would give the president a slight edge. Maybe it's 10,000 votes, but it might be enough to put him over the top in Michigan. Just hold on to that idea. It's not conclusive. It's just something that we're trying to run through here. Here's Milwaukee down here. Remember, we were told that 3 a.m. was the mark we were going to get a dump, and now it's been pushed off to 5 a.m. Joe Biden in Milwaukee County, as of now, he's got 60% of the votes cast there. In 2016, Hillary Clinton was up by 10 points more. Is there 10% more votes here for Joe Biden? There might be. But at the moment, he is underperforming Hillary Clinton from Milwaukee County, which leads me to think, if you do some number crunching here in Wisconsin, a vote that was captured by 22,000 votes 4 years ago might be right around that same marker yet again. So just take that logic, okay, and come out to the what-if scenario for what might be happening in this election now. Democratic electoral votes in Nevada seems to be breaking his way. Haven't called it yet for Alaska. Let's assume it goes for the red team tonight. I mentioned the problems, the complications in Georgia. Let's say the red team and the president sticks to that current lead, even if it's super thin in Georgia. I'm told there's no recount in the state law. So even if it's super thin, he holds on to 16 electoral votes. Maybe North Carolina doesn't move. Maybe it sticks that way even tomorrow when we start looking at this again. Now we're at 244 and 247. So what I just explained to you about the thin margins in Michigan and Wisconsin, if they go the president's way, he still wins at 273. I'm just saying this is one scenario that's out there as we try and crunch these numbers. And I mean, just to give a lot of people agita, I'll just throw this in. What if tomorrow at noon, Georgia flips? All right, now we're back below the number. Then the focus comes back to Pennsylvania, 20 electoral.
Which it always does. So let's go to Pennsylvania really quickly. Brian Yennis, who's our intrepid reporter on the ground there, says that 1.1 million mail-in ballots have been counted already. There are 1.4 million mail ballots remaining that they have currently. So that's 43.56% of the mail-in ballots have been counted. So you got 1.4 mail-in ballots out there. Now, we talked to Arnon earlier, where the mail-in traditionally in this election has broken almost 6 out of 10 for Biden. We don't know that that's the case in this particular case, but let's just say it is. 60% of 1.4, you could get to the number that you need to the difference, the 600,000.
Keep it.
To flip Pennsylvania. Now, the counties that he says are out, all of them were Trump counties in 2016, except Monroe. So you've got Beaver, Cumberland, Franklin, Greene, Mercer, Monroe, and Montour. 7 counties have 155,849 mail-in ballots.
It's good stuff here. It's a very important part of the equation, too, Brett. We knew that those 7 counties told the Secretary of State's office a few days ago that they were going to man the polling stations tonight and then worry about the mail-in ballots tomorrow. Well, where are these counties here, okay? Just come over here to the border here with Ohio. That's Mercer. Pop on down here, Lawrence. I'll get this right. Beaver County. You're at 71%. Not a ton of votes, but in a race that's super tight that could make a difference. Come down here to Greene. Greene's one of those counties that's not going to count the mail ballots of tomorrow. That's what they say. It's an 8,000 vote difference there, 82%. Over here, this is Franklin County. Again, 82%, and a clear margin here between 48,000 and some 9,400 votes for Joe Biden.
And wait, where did that go in 2016?
I can show you here. Franklin County in 2016.
Huge margins.
I mean, this is fracking, right? 74%. I'll just come back to 2020. Now you're at 82. Just to finish the equation here, I thought I had it here. Yeah, Cumberland County, right on. 70% this year from 4 years ago. 59%. I mean, wow.
You're picking up big votes.
So how can you not call it, is the question, when you look at those outstanding counties, Bill, that are all heavily Trump counties?
2 reasons. This is Philadelphia.
Philadelphia.
Yep, that's it.
Yep.
You know, I could show you again, guys, 2016, 560,000 raw votes for Hillary Clinton. So how is Joe Biden, so based on the early vote here, he's at 73.5, 2016. So that's the margin. I'm going to keep drilling this home here. I'm just trying to find something to try and make sense of what's happening out there. Listen, that's the margin of difference that I just talked about in Detroit, Michigan. It's 10 points. I'll just pop over here and see what I find. Sorry, guys. Let me just get out of this and get into Milwaukee. Shucks.
We have time. Take your time.
Thank you. We're not going anywhere. There's nowhere to go out on that sidewalk either anywhere in these streets. So he was at 60%. She was at 70. That's an interesting pattern. I don't know what it means.
So is it like the inner city in some of these places performing under
It would
where
appear.
Hillary was?
It would appear. I mean, that's what I find here. I mean, the smart guys might be able to fill in the blanks on that, but that's a clear difference to me. We just looked at three major American cities: Philadelphia, Detroit, and Milwaukee, and each time it came up with a 10% deficit from 4 years ago. That could be significant ultimately.
Fox News politics editor Chris Stirewalt has been watching all of this unfold with us. He joins us once again for some final analysis. All right, Chris. Well, first of all, you have anything?
We got nothing. We can tell you there's vote coming in Wisconsin that we're watching closely. There's a vote dribbling in Nevada that we're looking at. Those are two states that are ripening. They're not ready to call, but they're two states where we're starting to get some. There is a remaining data flow there. So we've got that. But for the big three, right, in the upper Midwest, it's not going to be anytime soon.
All right, I'm going to go through some races here. Susan Collins in Maine.
So I'm going to in a lot of these races, I'm going to tell you the same thing, which is that because of that mail to day of vote discrepancy, things that look like they're solid may not be as solid as they think. Susan Collins has certainly outperformed the expectations that many had, especially at the moment when the Supreme Court nomination came down and it looked like it might be curtains for her and her poll numbers really sagged. She has clearly fought her way back in this race. She has to be pleased with where she is, but there's not going to be a call tonight.
John James in Michigan.
John James has outperformed Donald Trump in Michigan consistently in polls, and we see it also tonight. Now, Michigan is one of those states where we're going to see a big crunch, right? You're going to see things change dramatically when all of that early vote, all of those mail-in ballots that heavily favor Democrats come in. Will Democrats get their number for Trump? Could James occupy that middle space and thread the needle? Even if Trump loses Michigan, it's possible. He has run an exemplary campaign and really found a way to get there in a tough state.
As Karl Rove said, Georgia, 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 it is becoming a central focus, and you've got two Senate races there, Chris. What are you seeing here?
Georgia is astonishingly close on the presidential level. Whether or not we're going to avoid a runoff in the regular seat, in the Perdue seat, we're not going to be able to call in the coming couple of hours. But if you're Perdue, this is what you've been hoping for, is that you could just crest above that line, avoid the runoff, and move on and forget about John Ossoff.
Okay, and we haven't said anything about Alaska, but Dan Sullivan's running there, expected to win, right?
Favored to win. Certainly, he was in our lean Republican category. Alaska has a strong independent streak, so you don't want to take too much for granted. They have slow vote count. We always joke about bringing the returns in on dog sleds. So you have to like Sullivan's chances, and you have to like Trump's chances in Alaska. Obviously, of the 7 states that we've yet to call, you'd have to like Trump's chances in Alaska best of all.
All right, so final thought for this evening as we look out. There's Alaska. He's probably going to get those 3 electoral votes eventually. Final thought as we get ready to go into the next hours. It sounds like we're going to be back at about 11 to continue this anchor-orama. What do you think?
Here's what the funny thing is. We've sort of ended up where we thought we'd end up all along, back in the upper Midwest. Now, obviously, if Georgia goes against Trump, that changes the calculus. But here we are back in those 3 states that we knew all along in our guts we'd be fighting it out through again 4 years ago, right? And I think it's telling about where the American political attitude is, but it's also telling that we've been able to track this race so closely as we've gone. And I have a high degree of confidence in the elections officials in all of those states and all of the states that are yet to be called, because they know the pressure's on. And that's when they're going to perform their best. They know they're being watched, and they're going to live up to the moment.
Can we say that polls stink, though?
No, the polls have done a great job this year. There have been no states.
Oh, come on.
What do you mean?
What do you mean? Wisconsin plus 17, ABC, Washington Post.
Yeah. Well, every state
poll
that Trump has won, he was behind in.
We didn't do that.
Biden was up 5.
Florida was tight, and we knew it was tight.
All right.
No clear winner yet. Election results in the presidential race hinge on 6 battleground states: Georgia, North Carolina, Nevada, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. Now, according to the Associated Press, Joe Biden is pulling slightly ahead in Wisconsin in the vote count there. Votes are counted, but we understand Green Bay and I believe it's Kenosha are the areas that have not fully been counted yet. What does that say to you about the president's chances in that state?
Arnon Mishkin is the director of Fox News Decision Desk. He's the guy who, when you watch the... Good morning to you, Arnon. So you're the guy, you and your team, you're the folks who decide, okay, we've looked at all the numbers and this is where we are. This is who we are absolutely sure that is going to win it. The states that are too early to call right now: Pennsylvania, although Trump is up a bit there.
Yes.
North Carolina, Trump is up. Michigan, Trump is up. Wisconsin, Joe Biden is ahead by just a little bit. Georgia, it looks like Trump is up. And in Nevada, Joe Biden is a little ahead as well. Okay, it's too early to call these because there are just too many votes outstanding, right?
Precisely. I mean, in Nevada, you do have a situation where Biden has a pretty good lead, but it's nowhere near where we want it to be in order to be able to make a call. In Wisconsin, as you say, yesterday a lot of people were saying, wait, Donald Trump is way ahead here. But now, with the late counted vote, it appears late counted vote mainly from Milwaukee and other parts which are sort of Democratic areas, we're seeing that Biden is ahead. The president continues to be significantly ahead in both Pennsylvania and Michigan, the 2 other Rust Belt states. And in North Carolina and Georgia, the president is ahead, but again, that's getting a little dicey and challenging. And right now, we're not in a position to call it. In fact, we're in a position to say this thing could get really close in both states, even though when you show the North Carolina number there, it looks like it's a pretty good lead. When you look at where the vote is outstanding, it's not that good a lead. And the biggest challenge for the president is that this year's election is very different from any other election, because this year you had basically the vast majority of Republicans felt the need to vote on Election Day in person. The vast majority of Democrats, on the other hand, felt the need to vote early or by mail. And the difference between those 2 kinds of votes was vastly bigger than anything we'd ever seen. So right now, I'll tell you that the only state where President Trump did not win the Election Day in-person vote was probably New York, maybe Connecticut, those sort of deep blue states. I think he even won the Election Day vote in California. Wow. And the only, very few states did President Trump win the early or mail-in vote. He even lost it in states like Alabama, Mississippi, and other states that we knew were absolutely going to go in his camp.
So, Arnon, if you look at those 3 Rust Belt states, if you look at
Yes.
Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, let's say they don't finish counting these until Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock, maybe even next week, worst case scenario. If you look at Michigan and Wisconsin, if President Trump wins both of those, does he need Pennsylvania? Do we have to wait until they finish counting?
It depends on North Carolina and Georgia. Right now, Biden is at 238 electoral votes. If he wins Nevada, which I think Nevada's leaning in his direction, then he's at like 244, I think, and then he needs 26. So the combination of Wisconsin and Michigan alone would get him to 270. Right. So President Trump needs to win Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and one of those 2, or possibly the main second CD, where, by the way, I think the president is ahead pretty clearly.
Arnon, some quick questions for you, real quick. On Pennsylvania, there's 1.4 million, they say, ballots. You guys were saying that aren't counted yet. The president's up by 600,000. Roughly, unlike Wisconsin, it looks like when it comes to Pennsylvania, these are, for the most part, counties which the president has done well in the past and present, correct?
Yes, but remember, we now need to look not just geographically at where the vote is coming in, but what kind of vote is coming in. And we don't always know if the vote we're counting is a early vote or a election day vote, and that's not always reported. What we do know when we look at the shape of the vote, I mean, Donald Trump could easily win all 3 of those Rust Belt states. He could easily win Pennsylvania. He could easily win Michigan. He could easily win Wisconsin, even though he is not going to win any of those states by anything close to the margins he has in Pennsylvania and Michigan right now. And that's why we think, wait a second, we're not seeing enough of the election early or mail-in vote, because we know that that's the vote that sort of tilts Biden. And so that's why we're waiting and seeing. And yes, you're right. But at the same time, optically, it looks like he has a really solid lead in both Pennsylvania and Michigan.
Okay, and so Arnon, to repeat what you had said a couple of minutes ago, that across the entire country, Donald Trump, for the most part, won the vote on Election Day. If people went in to vote, it was largely because it was Republicans who mainly did, with the exception of, you said maybe New York and California. But of the people, and I know we don't do exit polling anymore, but you do voter
Fox News voter analysis.
Thank you very much. Who generally voted for Trump and who generally voted for Biden?
I think President Trump got his traditional, the traditional backing of particularly whites without college educations, and sort of the working class of America. And he got particularly rural voters. I think what you're seeing in America is a very clear split between rural America and urban America, where I think rural America, which is the vast landscape of this country, clearly has gone strongly for the president. On the other hand, urban America and suburban America is where former Vice President Biden did quite well. He also did well. Biden also did well with suburban women, in particular with college-educated people and with minority groups. There was talk earlier on that the president was going to be able to make inroads with the African-American community. He was not. Some inroads. I think he's done a little better this year amongst Hispanic Americans than he did in 2016. That was particularly important in Florida, where I think he did extremely well with Cuban Americans.
So, Arnon, if you look at Michigan, John James, it hasn't been called yet, but he's up about 6 points there. He's winning. Is that a good indication that President Trump will win if people, most people, and correct me if I'm wrong, vote straight ticket?
Well, yes, I think I have a feeling John James may be outrunning the president in Michigan, excuse me, and so that gives him an opportunity. At the same time, I think John James could win. It's one of those situations where I don't think he'd win by the kind of margins he's showing right now, and that's why we think there's maybe some Democratic vote out there, and so we need to wait and see. Right. A couple of hours ago when we were talking about Wisconsin, we thought, why can't we call it? Well, because there turned out there was Democratic vote. And again, by the way, I don't know who's going to win Wisconsin. I know it's going to be really close. Right. I have a feeling Michigan and Pennsylvania will also be really close.
So, Arnon, we mentioned before we started the show at 5 a.m. we're going to get a big ballot dump at 5 a.m. Did we get it? Because it looks like that for the first time, percentage points ahead, 49.4 to 49.1. He takes his first lead, does Joe Biden. But what's left? You mentioned Milwaukee was coming in. Did all of Milwaukee come in? And what other counties are we looking at?
I don't believe all of Milwaukee has come in yet. I think we're looking at a scattering of vote across all the different counties. I don't think there's one group of place that's really outstanding. What's outstanding, even though it says 99% in, we'll get to that in a minute. What's outstanding really is a bunch of the early and mail-in vote that the state or the counties have not yet counted. And the reason you're seeing 99% in is because that is based on our expected vote in each of the states, and we have had to readjust that upwards several times over the past 12 hours. And I have a feeling in Wisconsin we'll be adjusting it again in the next 20 minutes. But what we're seeing is an historic turnout. That basically this was an election, everyone talked about how this was the most important election of their lifetime. Both Trump supporters and Biden supporters felt it was really important to get out and vote, and they did. And so I think we're going to see the highest turnout in any American election as based on percentage of Americans.
67% of eligible voters voted. I mean, that's astounding.
Arnon, when will we get results? When do you think?
I think I'm anticipating more results in Wisconsin. It may become clear today. I'm expecting once they come back to work in Georgia and North Carolina to see some of those results. Michigan, I don't know, and Pennsylvania, I'm pretty sure is going to take a few days or longer. We saw what they did and what they didn't do in the primaries and how long it took, and I have a feeling we're going to see that again.
And you're not going to sleep until Pennsylvania comes in, so we'll see you on Friday. Thanks, Arnon.
Okay, Chief.
Arnon, you're going to be joining us. Yeah, we'll see you every hour on this show. Your analysis is so helpful. All right, let's bring in Arnon Mishkin. He's the director of the Fox News Decision Desk. He's been up all night, been on all the shows, and he has just a wealth of information for us when it comes to these states. Good morning to you, Arnon.
Good morning to you. Thank you for having me.
Good morning.
Morning.
I think everyone's waking up saying, when will we know? When will we get results? What do you think?
I think we could see a couple of states decided today. I think that Nevada is very close to being, they say they're going to be counting more vote starting at 9 a.m. local time, which is roughly noon in the east. I think that Wisconsin is also going to be getting more vote reported today. I also think that Georgia, particularly the suburban counties around Atlanta, will be getting additional vote reported today. And so it's
all right, so let's start with Georgia.
Okay.
Right. Let's start with Georgia. What do you see? It's about 1.5 points between them. What should we know about what's left and where?
We know that some of the outstanding vote is in the Atlanta area, which tends to be more, and the Atlanta suburbs, which was the sort of the places one of the places in the country that swung from Romney to Clinton. So it's possible that the former vice president has an advantage there. It's also possible that some of those suburban counties have sort of gone back to Trump since their performance in 2018. But the other thing that we don't know, and this is the mystery about this entire election, is how many outstanding early and mail-in votes are to be counted. The unique thing about this election is, for whatever reason, Republicans this year said, I need to vote in person on Election Day. Democrats were much more adamant, or as adamant, saying, I need to vote early or by mail in this election. And what you saw was huge differences between the way the early mail-in vote came in and the way the Election Day vote came in. So on Election Day yesterday, President Trump may have won every state on Election Day, with the exception possibly of the deep blue states of New York and Connecticut. On the other hand, if you just look at the early and mail-in votes, Joe Biden probably won almost every state with the exception of the Dakotas. I mean, he got more early and mail-in votes in places like Mississippi and Alabama, places that we knew from the get-go were going into Trump's column.
Right.
And so when we look at the votes, that's the stuff that may be remaining. That's the stuff that the states haven't totally reported.
Right, indeed. And I'm looking at the FoxNews.com interactive map, and it shows that the Dakotas, to your point, the president is in the 60s, in mid to upper 60s in vote totals. If we could put up Michigan for just a moment. I know that according to FoxNews.com, with 84% of the votes counted, the president is ahead 51.4 to Joe Biden's. There are the very latest numbers right there. But what's interesting, as I look at the Senate race, Arnon, it looks like John James, the challenger to the Democrat, Gary Peters, John James actually is outpolling the president.
Yes, I think there was a lot of indication that James was going to outperform the president. And so right now it looks like he has a really good shot of defeating the incumbent and making that the second turnover for the Republicans of the evening. We're going to have to wait and see as Michigan continues to count the votes, and particularly as we find out how many really outstanding early and mail-in votes there are before we can make a call in that state.
Right. If I could just ask you real quick, why do you think John James has a better chance to win than the president when they have the same distance between the candidates?
I think he's outpolling the president, if you look at the actual numbers.
Yep.
And I think he may have had a
But what about the separation?
I think the difference is a little greater for James right now. But listen, I'm not ready to call either one of those races. I want to see more vote in Michigan. Last night it looked like the president had a strong lead in Wisconsin. Right now, Wisconsin has turned into a toss-up. Same with Georgia, which is, clearly, as Trump has a slight advantage, but it's pretty clearly a toss-up, really, right now.
All right, Arnon, thank you very much. We'll see you later. Let's bring it on Arnon, Michigan. He's director of Fox News Decision Desk. That's a very important business card that he has. Arnon, things are beginning to change, and if we can begin in. We're looking at Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Nevada. And by the power vested in me, I'd like to start with Michigan and take a look. It is closing a little bit, and I wonder if you could take a look at that. It looks like it is 50.5 to 48.3. We'll take a look. Excuse me, 49.8 to 48.6. Do you know what counties are coming in?
It's not so much what counties are coming in, although we do know that the Detroit area and that stuff is coming in, and that is one of the reasons why former Vice President Biden has kind of closed some of the gap with the president in Michigan, where, last night, a couple of hours ago, it looked like the president had a very large lead. That lead has been reduced significantly. And in fact, in our models right now, it's basically a toss-up. It is an unknowable toss-up, but it's clearly a toss-up. The thing about Michigan is what we're waiting for is not the election day vote. We're waiting for the early and the mail-in vote. And we know that the early mail-in vote this year was really strongly Democratic. Just as the election day vote was strongly Republican, the early mail-in vote was strongly Democratic, and that's the vote we're waiting for. And so right now, Michigan is a toss-up. And this is very important for the president, because even if the president wins Georgia, where it's almost tied right now, he's got a slight edge. North Carolina, where I think he has an edge. We're not ready to call it, but he's got an edge. And Pennsylvania, he still winds up at 268 electoral votes. And so he needs either Michigan or Wisconsin or Nevada. I don't think he's going to get Nevada. It's sort of very strongly leaning Trump. He needs either Michigan or Wisconsin in order to close the deal and win re-election. And right now, both Michigan and Wisconsin are looking increasingly toss-up. And that's significant news.
Could Michigan be done today? Could Michigan be done counting today?
That is clearly within the range of possibility. We're not going to call it until we're convinced that one side or the other has certainly won. But given the way Michigan's been counting, it's very possible that they could we could have counted enough vote to be confident in a call one way or the other. But as I said, right now, it's a toss-up.
Right. And if we could look real quickly at North Carolina, you mentioned that. According to FoxNews.com, they've got the interactive map, and it's fantastic. Something like 94% of the ballots have been returned. And as you can see, the president is up by that much, 94%. And then you look at Georgia as well, also 94%, and the president is up. It looks substantially. It looks substantial to us. Arnon, they both have 94% in. How much more do you need before you declare a winner?
Well, the thing is that the remaining vote, even in the southern states, which are really good about counting the early and election day vote, much better than the northern Rust Belt states, which have very little experience in it. Even in these southern states, the last vote to be counted tends to be, or last tranche of vote to be counted, is likely heavily early and mail-in vote. And that's the vote that sort of tilts to Biden. Actually, it doesn't tilt to Biden. It swings to Biden in terms of what it compared to the election day vote, which very much swings to the president. And so we're not ready to call Georgia. North Carolina is looking a little better for the president, but Georgia is clearly, a slight edge for the president. But really, when I say slight, I mean slight.
Okay.
Arnon, what could some of these Rust Belt states learn from a state like Florida that had their act together, that did this smoothly and got results in last night? And does the American public have a right to know immediately, and, the nominees, too, or the candidates?
Well, the candidates for sure have a right to know, and the American public certainly has a right to know. I mean, look, if you're in my business, there's a beauty in the vote counting process. There's a beauty in watching democracy and the vote be counted. I got to tell you, it'd be nice if it were to go faster. I do think that if the northern states in these Rust Belt states move to much more early and mail-in votes, which the southern states and the western states have embraced wholeheartedly, then yes, they've got to get better at it. They've got to decide whether or not they can start counting the vote earlier than they've been when they had, and make for shorter election nights, so that I can get some sleep.
Arnon, Arnon, I can imagine that there are going to be challenges either side because there's 1% separating Michigan, North Carolina, and Georgia. You imagine that too? There's going to be a challenge being that the whole presidency is at stake?
Yes. I mean, my sense is that both these parties have raised hundreds of millions of dollars to prepare for legal challenges in all the states where the vote is close. And I think the president said so yesterday, and I think that we know that the Biden folk are also funding lawyers.
Okay, go get one more cup of coffee. We're going to talk to you and pick your brain in 1 hour. Arnon, thank you very much.
Because these elections are all moving.
But then a blow dealt to the president. Joe Biden surprised everyone, picking up Arizona. Then another big pickup for Biden, Minnesota going blue as well. Now, here's what's not yet called and likely to determine the outcome of the election, that Rust Belt trio: Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Pennsylvania likely to take days, even into next week, to call it. Total together, all that would be 46 electoral votes.
Arnon, Michigan, he is the director of Fox News Decision Desk. He is literally the man behind the curtain. He's the guy who gets to make the big calls and tell us exactly who the winners and losers are. You know, Arnon, as we look at the states, still too early to call, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Nevada, which Griff kind of detailed right there. I know you're not a pollster. You're an analyst. But
yes.
Isn't it clear that the so-called shy Trump voter was pretty much impossible for the professional pollster to figure out which way they were going to vote?
Well, before we start doing a deep dive and an autopsy on the polling this year, I'd like to get the final votes in. I think that, you know, the key thing this year that made it so different was you had Election Day vote, and the Election Day vote in person was clearly Republican. And then you had early vote and mail-in vote, and that was clearly Democratic. And the skew was enormous in both cases. I think Biden was winning the early vote by 25 points. Trump was winning the Election Day vote by 25 points. Trump won almost every state on the Election Day. Biden won almost every state with the exception of North Dakota in the early and mail-in vote. Trump, I think, may have lost New York on the Election Day vote, but nothing more. And so before we get it, let's get all those votes, particularly the early and mail-in votes, which are the ones that get counted last. That's what we're looking in Michigan and Wisconsin in particular. That's what Nevada is counting right now. That's why Georgia, you know, Trump is ahead, but it's tough. So right now, what we're looking at is a place where, in order for the president to win re-election, he's going to need to win Georgia, which I think is very doable, North Carolina, which I think is almost likely for him right now, and Pennsylvania, who knows. But even if he gets all those three, he's still at 268 electoral votes. And in order to win, he's going to have to win either Michigan or Wisconsin. And if you look at the vote right now, those are, if anything, frankly, let's put it this way. When I look at Michigan and Wisconsin right now, we are nowhere near calling it. But in those states, I'd rather be Joe Biden than Donald Trump. In North Carolina and Georgia, I'd rather be Donald Trump than Joe Biden. That's how I'd put it. And in Pennsylvania, I don't know who I'd like to be.
What if Pennsylvania, what if they don't finish counting all these votes until the end of the day Friday, or maybe even next week? Would we, if Trump does get Georgia and North Carolina and Biden gets Nevada, that leaves Wisconsin and Michigan. If Wisconsin and Michigan go to Trump, would he be the winner at that point, or would we have to wait on Pennsylvania?
If the president wins both Wisconsin and Michigan, North Carolina and Georgia, he's the next president. If Biden wins Nevada, Wisconsin, and Michigan, he's the next president. We all think that Pennsylvania is ground zero. It might not be. It may be Wisconsin and Michigan.
What distance Arnon, is do they have to be in Pennsylvania to not be waiting on them to count every single ballot? Right now, to the layman, Trump's up pretty substantially, 600,000 votes, 55 to 43, and we're kind of trying to avoid them counting ballots with no postmark on them for the next couple of days. What distance do you need? What lead do you need to make it secure?
For the president, that's the $64,000 question, because historically we look at the vote that's come in and we say, well, the next vote's going to look like that. This year, we may think that the president has a lead, but it doesn't mean he's got a lead in the state. He's got a lead in the Election Day vote. And what's left to be counted is the early vote and the mail-in. And that's what Pennsylvania has shown itself somewhat lackadaisical in counting. We saw that in the primaries. We're seeing that now. We anticipate it could take days in Pennsylvania to count the early and mail-in vote. And it's not my job to decide which votes should count or not count. That's the job of the courts and the state, and primarily the state legislatures. My job is to follow those, whatever regulations they have, and say who's going to win in that database. That's my team's job.
Sure. And right now in Pennsylvania, according to your team, Fox News, only 64% of the vote is in. So
Yes.
Back to work, Arnon. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Meantime, Michigan Senate race between incumbent Democrat Gary Peters and Republican challenger John James still too early to call. Same goes for North Carolina's race between incumbent Republican Tom Tillis and Democratic challenger Cal Cunningham.
All right, for more on all this, let's bring in Darren Shaw from the Fox News Decision Desk. Darren, great to have you here this morning. I know it's been a long night, but we want to pick your brain when we go through this electoral map, because as we know, the number that we're watching, 270, is the number of electoral votes that is needed to win. Here is the map. The gray states, of course, are those key battleground states that have yet to be called. And Darren, can you give us an update on some of these, especially North Carolina this morning? Still too close to call here, 94% of the vote in. Donald Trump leading by more than 50% in that state. Do we expect to call this state soon?
Well, North Carolina has been a bit of a mystery to us because, as you mentioned, we're about 6% shy of the expected vote. And, you know, we don't have as strong a sense in North Carolina of where that remaining vote is as we do in other states. So, for instance, we feel pretty confident about where we think the race is going to wind up in Wisconsin and in Michigan. But in Carolina, you know, our geographic models and our partisan models that take into account where the outstanding vote is, they're a little ambivalent here. So we're not sure. Right now, Trump has a narrow lead. It's not clear that Biden has an obvious pathway in North Carolina, but the data just aren't ripe. We're not quite there on a call, and they've been a little ambiguous about when exactly they're going to update their counts. So we're, like you guys, we're just waiting here, sitting tight on North Carolina.
Really interesting. I'm going to dive into Wisconsin in just a second, because I know that you have been talking about some of those counties that Hillary Clinton led in 2016, where Joe Biden's leading by a wider margin now, but also the same for Trump. Some of those counties that he was able to claim victory back in 2016, he's leading by a wider margin there. I'll dive in there in a second. But Nevada, will you be able to call this state in the next couple of hours?
We've just got an update. We're following, like you guys, some of the election officials, Secretary of State's office, even some political reporters and stringers who are kind of working on the ground there. We expect another tranche of data to come. I believe it's 9 o'clock local time from Nevada. And, that will update the totals. We may be closer to making a call then. But Nevada is another place. Unlike some of these other states where we have a strong sense of where the vote's going to come from and therefore how it's going to break, in Nevada, it looks like it's coming from all over the state. It's not just coming from Vegas or Reno. There's a lot of vote in the balance of the states. So that's a narrow Biden lead. I think it's like 8,000 votes or so. It could expand to about 10,000, but that's a little iffy to make a call. So we're sitting tight. We're going to wait for that, hopefully, last tranche of data to come in from Nevada.
All right, back to the board here. When looking at Wisconsin, as I mentioned, some of those key counties that you're watching from 2016, especially Kenosha, where you see the president 51+% of the vote in that county, leading by a wider, sorry, I just clicked on Racine. Here we go. Kenosha, the president 51% of the vote there, leading by a wider margin than he was in 2016. You move a bit further north, and you've been watching Milwaukee County, Wisconsin. Again, a county that Hillary Clinton secured in 2016 that Joe Biden has managed to secure a wider margin of victory so far. What can you tell us about being able to call Wisconsin anytime soon?
Wisconsin seems like they're just about done collecting data. And I believe the latest, and Senator, you might have, at this point I've been in the pod for about 5 minutes, so you may have more recent data than I do. But we think the Biden lead is about 20,000, I believe, at last check. Look at your monitor. Yeah, about 20,000 votes. It seems to us like, well, let's just say you'd certainly rather be in Biden's position than in Trump's position right now. There's still some outstanding vote, but we think most of that is mail-in balloting. And as you know, the mail-in balloting in especially these upper Midwest states has had a decidedly pro-Biden slant to it. So I think it's possible that that Biden lead may even increase a little bit. But again, in a race like this where a call has such consequences in shaping the news and how people are viewing the election, we're gonna make sure it's coming from where we think it's going to be coming from.
All right, and by the way, I just want to pull up Brown County, home to Green Bay, Wisconsin, where President Trump, 53% of the vote there, and to your point, it was a difference about 20,000 votes. So we'll continue to watch that state. Want to go into Michigan now because obviously this is one of the big battlegrounds that we are watching. What can you tell us as far as Wayne County? 62% of the vote, last I looked, was in for Wayne County. How crucial is that, the Detroit area in Michigan? What are you watching there?
You've hit the nail on the head, Senator, that if people are looking at this right now, you notice that the president is leading. And we, of course, on the decision team got a lot of blowback last night for some states where, like Virginia, for instance, where we had an early call, where people said, well, I'm looking at the screen and the president's winning decidedly. Well, two factors. Where is the outstanding vote located? And is it election day vote? Or is it mail-in vote? So those two factors come together in Michigan. A lot of vote remaining from very pro-democratic places like Wayne, and a lot of that vote is mail-in vote, which skews even more heavily to Biden. Right? So even though the president maintains the lead and it's going to be a close race, we expect that to narrow considerably. When they release those data, we think we're going to get more data from Wayne and some other counties relatively early this morning, so we may have some clarity in Michigan by around noon.
Good information. Here's Wayne County, just pulled it up. Obviously, the southeastern corner of the state, a cluster of those blue counties that we will be watching as they come in. Darren, while I have you, can I take you into the what-if board? Because we're playing around with those electoral votes and wondering what the paths to victory are for both candidates. And if you're saying right now, and you're hearing from this from the Trump campaign as well, that they're still feeling good about North Carolina and Georgia, is it fair to play around with this scenario at this point, knowing those states aren't called, Darren, to give Georgia, North Carolina to President Trump? That brings him to 244 on the map. He's leading in Pennsylvania, although we know the situation on waiting on all of those early votes to be counted. You tack on a Pennsylvania, and all he would have to do then, which would still be a big one, is to secure Wisconsin for the win there without having to win Michigan with the 16 electoral votes there. What kind of scenarios are you playing around with?
Well, one I'd mention, Sandra, is you go back to your board. Don't forget about Alaska. Trump has a significant lead in the early votes that we've got there. Alaska's a tricky state because it's so big and there's a robust mail-in program, but you're talking about getting ballots in from all of these rural areas and from Native American lands and stuff like that. But remember, that's another 3 electoral votes that look to be leaning Trump at this point. But if you go to that board, and I believe at this point, if you give, let's set aside Georgia, which I think is going to continue to narrow, but I agree with you that it's certainly plausible the president could hold on there, and North Carolina, where he clearly has a lead, I think. If you go Nevada to Biden, if you go Wisconsin to Biden, and you go Michigan to Biden, right, I believe. Let's see. So you got Pennsylvania to Biden at this point. Are you playing in? If that clearly would put him over the top. Right. 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 But if I think you got Michigan red, flip Michigan to blue. Okay. Right. There you go. Right. I think the pathway, the most plausible pathway for Biden at this point is if you go Nevada plus Wisconsin plus Michigan. I believe, again, I'm got to be careful because we're talking about single electoral votes. I believe that actually gets him to 270. You know, so this is and you know, then I don't believe he would actually have to have Pennsylvania. But you can check me on the math on that. Things are sort of moving quickly and by the minute as we continue to get data here.
Darren, I got to leave it there, but just a few second answer. When do we know who wins this race? That is the question.
I know. I wish I could give you something better. I do think we'll have some clarity by the early afternoon, and I think it's important.
All right, 6 states up for grabs. That's what we're all watching this morning. Darren Shaw joining us again from our Fox News decision desk. I know the coffee's flowing this morning, but we're gonna get what we can from you as we await more of these states to be called. So, Darren, while we were talking last hour, top of the hour, something changed in Michigan, and our decision desk went lean Biden in that state, as you can see now, leading the president by 0.2 percentage points with 94% of the vote in. How close are we to calling this state?
I know this is an unsatisfactory answer, but we're still not there yet. We think that a huge chunk of the outstanding vote is, and you alluded to this last hour, Senator, is in Wayne County, which is heavily Democratic, and the fact that most of it's probably mail-in suggests it might be even more heavily Democratic. So there's a chance that Biden's very, very slim lead expands. But like Mike Tubin was suggesting in his earlier report, a county that hasn't reported all of its precincts or an error in reporting one way or the other that could change the numbers, just a few is enough to bring this thing back into question. So we're, again, exercising an abundance of caution here.
Darren, what can we take away from this? When I just brought up Wayne County, where right now it shows Joe Biden 67.1% of the vote to Donald Trump's 31.7%. What can you take away from this? As I flip back to the 2016 results, Hillary Clinton led that county by a greater margin than Joe Biden is leading Donald Trump right now. Can that tell us anything else about the rest of the state as we await the total?
You know, I think it's reasonable to infer that, you know, these sort of county-by-county variances suggest that, well, you know, people have come to like Trump a little more in some of these areas, that he's made some enemies in other areas, and so you patch it all together. But we're looking at, honestly, although the direction of the result may switch, it's possible that Biden would win Michigan, whereas Trump won it last time. But I think basically we're almost spot on what we saw in the last election, which is kind of astonishing. A small point, Senator, also, Wayne has lost a lot of voters over the last 10 or 15 years as people have left Detroit and even to a lesser extent suburban Detroit. So even better numbers might not result in the same vote totals, which is obviously critical here.
All right, I'm back to the electoral map when it comes to the what-if scenario. If you could help us, help bring us along that pathway to victory that you are identifying for potentially Joe Biden, if in fact you call, the decision desk calls Nevada soon, which we are waiting on. You pointed out, if that happens, a possible pathway to victory for Joe Biden would clearly be securing Wisconsin and securing Michigan, as we talk about that just now. That would bring Joe Biden to that even 270, Darren.
Yeah, 2 points here, Senator. The first is we continue to get updates from Nevada, and I feel somewhat sorry to report this, but when they said noon, that they would be done with their counting,
tomorrow.
They meant noon tomorrow.
Yes.
And we were, just to make people possibly feel a little better, they're processing mail-in and absentee ballots that they received yesterday. And they've got a signature check and some other requirements. So it's not, even as frustrating for us, it's not unusual. The other thing I just point out real quickly, that it's possible that if Joe Biden wins with 270, that the second CD in Omaha will have delivered the presidency for Joe Biden if all of this plays out. But who would have thought that?
Oh man,
even
are
a
we
week
down
ago?
to that? Wow. Okay. So because obviously that has already gone blue.
Right, right. So that would take him from 269 to 270. So isn't that just stunning? I mean, again, we're not there yet, but if we're playing these hypotheticals, that's a non-trivial hypothetical possibility.
So
here.
that is a possibility for a pathway to victory for Biden. Let's play around with some possible red states and pathway to victory for Donald Trump. He's at 213 before he potentially receives Georgia, North Carolina. What has to happen next? Obviously, Pennsylvania comes into play.
Right. He'd need to, yeah, Senator, he'd need to carry Alaska. right? So, which is still outstanding.
Yep.
Keep Pennsylvania, where he's currently leading, and then hold one of these three states, Nevada, right? And right now, perfectly candidly, I think Nevada may be his best shot, barring discrepancies in that Mike Tubin was pointing out, possibly in Wisconsin, or if we're incorrect about where the outstanding vote is in Michigan. But Nevada is still very close, and our models suggest that the remaining vote is going to be fairly even.
All right, so let's go back into that state, by the way. As we see the extremely close race, you can see vote totals, not just the percentages, but vote totals, a difference of less than 8,000 votes between the two candidates. But Darren, to go back to your news that you were sad to bring us, it is that we won't receive any additional reporting from that state until Thursday. This is people are going nuts about this on the social media universe. Why is that? Why aren't we going to get any more reporting from Nevada till tomorrow?
Yeah, and you know, we on the decision team should know better. We study this stuff, but we forget things. And in the heat of the drama last night, we'd forgotten some fundamental things. Nevada tends to be very good at vote counting, but because they have this mail-in system and they're receiving ballots on Election Day, they're not processing them until today. And to process them properly, this is according to the Secretary of State, they're going to need to do signature checks to make sure that the person didn't also vote in person, right? So no double voting. So all those sorts of safety features, which I think all of us would suggest would concede are necessary. They're going to delay the processing of the ballots, it looks like. Who knows? Maybe they'll get done early.
All really good information. Darren Shaw, I know you're busy. Thank you very much for your time.
Why don't we reset where we left off around 5 a.m. East Coast time and just give you a sense of what has perhaps moved since then, maybe what's changed a little bit in this direction or that direction. I want to start here in Wisconsin. And just at the moment, you've got a 21,000 vote lead for Joe Biden. Now, 4 years ago, that was flipped. Donald Trump won Wisconsin by 22,000 votes, went to a recount early in December. And just looking at a little article from earlier today, when they did the recount, they found 318 more votes for Donald Trump. So I don't know if we're in recount territory in 2020, but we might be here in the state of Wisconsin. Just a point of note here. When they did it 4 years ago, not a lot changed. That's the point here. Michigan, we last left off, and I was telling you about Trump trying to track down Biden. Well, here we are at the moment with Joe Biden today with a 22,000 vote lead there in Michigan. 4 years ago, Trump won the state by about 10,000 votes. So this is a bit of a flip at the moment also. So we'll see how that turns out. Pop on out here to Nevada. We are told, talking with Darren Shaw just about an hour ago with our decision team, Nevada has said they will not give results again until tomorrow. So what's the state of play? Nevada's got an 8,000 vote difference, which is it's razor tight. It was 26,000 for Hillary Clinton 4 years ago, and this year it's been cut by 2/3. We are told that the outstanding ballots in Nevada don't just come from Clark County, which is Las Vegas, or Reno up here in the Northwest, but it comes from all over the state. So that might lead us to think about the logic that John Roberts was giving there from the White House about the fact that they feel like they're still in Nevada, and we'll see if that's the case. John was also talking about Arizona. I know the White House has not given up on this. You guys know the great pushback we were given last night when we made that call. In the middle of the night, the Associated Press did the same thing. At the moment, Arizona has not changed. It's still blue. I'll pop down here to Georgia. You know what? Before I do that, let me make this point here, guys, because this is what it's all about. Of those three states I just talked about, if Joe Biden were to hang on to Michigan and hang on to Wisconsin and keep Nevada, he's at 270. Don't know what's going to happen down here in Georgia or North Carolina or Pennsylvania. Get that in a moment here. Here's the scenario now. Go ahead and reset this sucker, and we shall restart her in the morning here. For the Trump team, this is what they're looking at. The margin in Georgia, I'll show you in a moment here, is just so super tight. You want to keep Georgia. It's a few points here in North Carolina. I'll show you that in a moment here. You want to keep North Carolina. And then are there more votes to be found in Michigan and Wisconsin? There might be, but at the moment it doesn't appear that that's to be the case because of these mail-in ballots tend to skew blue, as we've been saying now for a day and a half. But what about Nevada? What happens if you take the lead out there in Nevada with all the other ballots that are yet to be counted over the next 24 hours or so? Now you're at 250, and look where we come back here, guys. Floating out here is Pennsylvania again. And if you're able to backtrack and come around and take the Keystone State, you are right on the number that you would need to get a second term. Now I'll drill in just a little bit more and just give you a state of the race here with the balance in Georgia the way it sets. When we left around 5 o'clock this morning, there were about 200,000 votes that were outstanding in the area of Atlanta. So we're talking about Fulton County, which is, it's 71% for Joe Biden, which is the number you would expect there. Just for comparison's sake, Hillary Clinton was right on the number 2 from 4 years ago. Back here in 2020, though, at the cab to the east of Atlanta, too, is another county there where a lot of votes were still outstanding. When I say a lot, I mean based on the entire turnout for the state. It's not a ton, but 200,000 votes at 5 a.m. can make a big difference when they're in the bluest part of the state of Georgia. And also Clayton County, small little county here south of Atlanta. Not as many votes as you find in Fulton County or DeKalb, but a big percentage for Democrats. And just to show you that in a close race, Hillary Clinton was right at that number, 86% from 4 years ago. So the state of play in Georgia this morning, then, is that 200,000 vote count has been about cut in half, we believe, in terms of being counted. However, the greater majority of those votes are going blue. So that favors the Biden team right now. So here's your marker with the president up about 2 points as of now, and about 100, I'm doing quick math here, guys, about 102,000 votes, real votes on the ground. So how is that now divvied up? That's something we're going to have to watch too throughout the day here. I'll just spin you up to North Carolina. We talked about this late into the evening. 94% of the votes in, that leaves you 6% of the vote in North Carolina that's outstanding. Why is that? Where are those votes? Where are they coming from? Right now, we don't know. And it's a confounding thing when you have so many absentee ballots that are cast in these states that really have not managed the volume of votes, not suggesting they can't do it. But when you handle the volume of votes, sometimes things get a little confusing and confounding as to where you go in the state. This is not your typical election. You know, I mean, we're trained to see real votes come in real time. And that's not the way it goes this year. They skew blue, then the red team comes in, and then we figure it out between both sides. By the way, here's Pennsylvania. 81% of the vote is in. We were talking just a few moments ago about how Donald Trump did in some of these counties. I mean, he was hitting these rallies time after time in Pennsylvania. But Joe Biden was doing the same thing when he did appear out of Delaware. He would go to Philadelphia here in the county of Philadelphia at the moment. He's clocking in for just shy of 400,000 real votes. Okay, Hillary Clinton, she was doing 560,000, about 84%. So there's still some votes to be counted there. The thing you can do here, guys, is you can poke around to the countryside in Texas, in the T here in Pennsylvania. Oftentimes we take Pennsylvania, we do the T because all the red is out here, then the blues in Pittsburgh and the blues down here in Philadelphia and the surrounding counties. This is Lackawanna, by the way. This is Scranton, PA, which the former vice president mentioned in his late night speech last night. This year, though, you can start poking around here. The president increased his percentage in a lot of these counties. The fracking message worked. He drove up turnout in Pennsylvania, but whether or not that's able or good enough to overcome these counties down here around Philadelphia. There's Montgomery, 60% for Joe Biden. And this is Chester County, more than a little bit for a Joe Biden edge. This is really, Bucks County is really a bellwether county that we find. And the president did quite well there, more than 53% of the vote. Reason I say that, 2016, look where it was. 2012, look where the same county, Bucks County, was. Really, it shows you just how close that state can be. But at the moment, the president really outperformed his number from 4 years ago, hence the reason why you can't call it. Brett, Martha, I think we're going to talk a lot about voter intent in the coming 24 hours or beyond.
Thanks, John. For more on the race where it stands now, Bill Hemmer joins us from the Billboard.
Good afternoon to you. I wish I could bring you new information. I mean, you know, we thrive on new data, right? It keeps us going in many ways. But, I mean, at last hour, I told you where Georgia was. hasn't changed. 100,000 votes between Biden and Trump. Pop up here to North Carolina, same story. 94% of the votes in, no change between these two men here. Wisconsin, you were just talking to Howie Kurtz a moment ago, right, guys?
Yep.
ABC, Washington Post, about a week ago, I think it was, right, on the calendar, they came out with a poll in Wisconsin that said that Joe Biden was up 17 points. How's this happen?
Good question.
How's that happen? Remarkable. No change there. We're still looking at about 21,000 votes in Wisconsin and Michigan here. Just a quick little tabulation. So this is interesting. I did not catch this earlier. So this is a county far up in northern Michigan. This is Traverse City here, by the way. The president won that county by about 3 points, okay? So we will try, just go back here. Okay, so that was red 4 years ago. With 65% of the Antrim County up there in northern Michigan. So just watching that, guys, trickle in real time, too. Nevada hasn't moved. We were told it would not move either. We were told to hang on till tomorrow before the Silver State checks in a little more. 8,000 votes separate Biden and Trump. What's happening in Arizona? The Trump team is still making a push. I heard John Roberts' report from Bill Stepien, the campaign manager. So far, at the moment, we were the first to call it. We're hanging on to it right now. Arizona's 11 electoral votes. You can do the what-if calendar now, the what-if map, and try and figure out who can get the 270. I'll show it to you guys. For Joe Biden, you hold Wisconsin.
Why can't we call Alaska, Bill?
Yeah. Good question. You hold Michigan and you hold Nevada if you do it again. That's why you get there. Just ran up to talk to Darren Shaw about that exact question.
Okay, good.
Jason Chaffetz, of all people, sent a text in from Salt Lake City, Utah. I said, why can't you call Alaska? We don't have enough information on the ground, and we don't know how many mail ballots went out, and that's why we're holding back, because we don't have a lot of eyes and ears, I guess you could say, in Alaska, and that's the reason.
All right, so just paint the picture for Trump. So he goes, he gets Alaska, and then he gets Georgia, and then he gets North Carolina.
He holds Georgia, holds North Carolina, 247.
Okay.
Okay.
He pulls out Pennsylvania.
I give him that in this scenario, yes.
So he needs...
Give him Maine 2.
He needs Nevada or Michigan.
Yeah, there's a network calling the state of Maine, but Maine splits up its votes, as you know, 4 electoral votes overall, but Congressional District 2 divides its vote. The president won there 4 years ago. We're thinking he wins again this year. That's our projection. We'll see if that holds up. The other 3 electoral votes have been called by another network, but we haven't gone there just yet. So you said, what was the last one you said, Brett?
Well, he needs he needs Nevada or Michigan.
That would do it, 274. Michigan, that would do it. Wisconsin, that would do it. On the ground here, however, in Michigan, this is the state of play. And Joe Biden has a lead.
All right. So that's happening. And then simultaneously, you see the call for the race in Maine. The Fox decision desk is calling Susan Collins. And Brett Baier was just on moments ago and said, we knew she had a news conference coming up, and he thought she might be conceding the race. And there you go, the Democrat there. Gideon, what a night for incumbents, that being the overall thing that we were watching. Breaking news on Overtime Now. The Fox News decision desk is ready to make a call, and they are calling the state of Maine to go for the President of the United States in his re-election bid. Currently, it is 1 electoral vote for President Trump. And I should mention that this is one of 2 states that are not winner-take-all. The other, of course, is Nebraska. And what that means is that it's a district process that they do. And so with 1 district, you get that 1 electoral vote. And that's what's happening right now. The state of Maine, Trump wins 1 electoral vote in the state of Maine. And so we're keeping up with that.
Now let's take a closer look at the numbers. Bill Hemmer, the anchor of Bill Hemmer Reports, he is here. You've been here. You have helped guide us through all of this. Help us talk us through a little bit of what you're seeing right now.
Okay. The actions in Michigan, although the margin right now, if you talk to the Trump campaign, it's a little difficult for them at the moment. That's John James' Senate seat as well is hanging in the balance. I know the president tweeted about that about 30 minutes ago. I'd say put your focus on 3 areas, Dana. This is Wayne County in Michigan, not all the votes in. Raw votes here for Joe Biden, 519,000. Why is that significant? Still some votes out there again, okay? But I want to show you this, where Hillary Clinton was. She was at 517,000. However, see the margin there for the president, 228? Again, more votes to be had out there. That was from 4 years ago. He's upped his margin to 244,000 now. I'm seeing that in different parts of Michigan, Dana. Like this is Genesee County, this is Flint. As of right now, you're about 102 raw votes for Joe Biden, 97,000 for the president. So what's happened so far? Again, some more votes out there. Look at that. Hillary Clinton won the county with 102,000 votes. President did better than he did in 2016. But in 2020, that's how's that happen? Right here at 2 o'clock East Coast time, the number of raw votes is almost exactly what it was from 4 years ago. Again, more to come in here. This is Kent County out here, Grand Rapids, Michigan. The White House felt very good about this county late last night. They've turned the trick at the moment up 5 points, but there's still a little bit outstanding there as well. That seems to be the focus there in the state of Michigan. Watch that. I know what some other folks are saying about Wisconsin. I can tell you the White House is going to file the official request for a recount. Margin there in Wisconsin is about 21,000 votes. It was 22,000 in 2016. You had a recount. In the end, it changed the vote about 319 votes in favor of Donald Trump, so not a big margin there. I know this is a great point of consternation, Arizona last night. We called it. The AP called it in the middle of the night. The Trump team believes at the moment, 16% of the votes still out there, that in coordination with Doug Ducey, the Republican governor out there, they think later tonight around 10 o'clock East Coast time that they're going to get another batch and another dump of votes. And they argue, Dana, that they are still in this thing in Arizona. We'll find out later this evening if that's the case. They're also making the argument, not just Maricopa County where you find Phoenix, but some of these other rural counties as well. You know, the president went here in Mojave County, had a huge rally in the closing day there. And trying to drive up those numbers. They're making the case to me, Dana, that they will win Arizona, but it will not be called until Thursday or Friday of this week. So we'll mark that word and see if that's the case and the way it turns out. So I could keep going, Dana. You got any questions we can talk about?
I do have a couple of questions. Because so they're saying possibly not till Thursday or Friday for Arizona. What are we waiting for in terms of Nevada?
Nevada, you have this Clark County, this is Las Vegas, where you get most of your votes in Nevada. To a lesser degree, up in the northwest corner here, this is Reno up here as well. They're making the case that there is fraud, in the words of one campaign official. They're making the case that there were culinary workers who no longer live in Nevada who were sent ballots. So now we're trying to chase that tail and see whether or not that leads somewhere. But at the moment, you've got an 8,000 vote margin, which is just razor tight in Nevada, and we'll see whether or not that stays. So.
Okay, I've got one last question.
Go.
Did you get any sleep?
45 minutes.
What I doubled that.
Did you?
But I have to tell you, that hour and a half sleep that I had was like nothing I don't think I've ever experienced a deep sleep like that.
Well, good for you, because maybe you get a few more hours tonight, but we're running on fumes. I tell you the thing about our industry, Dana, and you know it very well, when there is information, when there is data, when the story is changing, you can run on adrenaline for a long time.
Yeah.
It's those periods where you hit the lulls and nothing's new and you start to think, what's next? And that's when you feel it.
That is not today, indeed. Bill Hemmer, what a pleasure. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Okay. Brett, you might be prophetic here. Let's go to a Fox News alert here. The Fox News Decision Desk can now project that former Vice President Joe Biden will win the state of Wisconsin, further narrowing President Trump's prospects for amassing the 270 electoral votes needed for a second term. So we were just talking about this. You knew that this was getting close, but look at that, Brett, 49.6 to 48.9. So that's when you say it goes to the recount.
Right. This is, it's a huge win for Joe Biden here because it's a different path. But you could be a scenario where his path is with states that are being recounted. So that creates all kinds of other questions. We're not even talking yet about Michigan and Pennsylvania, where there are potential lawsuits there as far as absentee ballots, matching signatures.
What about Nevada?
and Nevada. So you could have a recount in Nevada.
Really great explanation, Andy. Thank you. We'll see if they get another bite of that apple, so to speak. Thank you, Andy. We'll talk to you later today. Andy McCarthy there. This is Pennsylvania. In a moment, we're going to come out to the map here and head down to Georgia. This is super close right here, about 1.5 points in Georgia. President's ahead, but the Fox Decision Desk says it's too close to call. We will break down the board for Georgia and more as we continue in a moment. Back to the Peach State as promised here at Battleground, Georgia. In a moment, we're going to check in with Jonathan Sari, but this is where the action is now. This is Atlanta and the surrounding metro counties here. This is Fulton County, where the city of Atlanta is located. Joe Biden with an expected lead there, more than 70%. But we were told at daybreak, if it just DeKalb County, just a little east of Atlanta, Georgia, checking the numbers here. We were to Clayton County, not as many votes there, but a strong percentage for the Democrat. Look, these are blue counties. You expect the vote county to run up. The problem at the moment, though, is that the vote is not conclusive.
Joe Biden has won Michigan and gets the 16 electoral votes from Michigan. That puts him now 6 electoral votes from the presidency of the United States. Nevada could do it. Those electoral votes are still out there. When you know there's 6 electoral votes there. If he were to take that state, he would be at 270, and he would be on his way to the White House.
Numbers in a surprising victory. Maine's Republican Senator Susan Collins was able to ward off her Democratic challenger. And in North Carolina, Republican Senator Tom Tillis has declared victory. But Democrat Cal Cunningham is waiting for every vote to be counted before conceding this race. Now, a win for Democrats in Michigan, as Fox News projects incumbent Senator Gary Peters will win re-election. But Republican challenger John James isn't convinced. Now, his campaign accusing local officials of election interference, telling Fox News there were all kinds of chicanery, including ballots that came in reportedly in the middle of the night.
It is 13 minutes until the top of the hour. Pennsylvania congressional candidate Kathy Barnett refusing to concede.
The Republican suing over what she believes is vote-by-mail fraud. She joins us live on her legal fight.
In Nevada, Joe Biden leads by barely over 0.5 percentage point. In Georgia, President Trump leads by 0.5 point. In North Carolina, the president leads by roughly 1.5 points. And in Pennsylvania, President Trump is leading by more than 2.5 points.
Now, let's go to those undecided state race boards. In Nevada, Biden leads by barely over 0.5 point. But in Georgia, President Trump leads by 0.5 point. Now, in North Carolina, Trump leads by roughly 1.5 points. And in Pennsylvania, Trump is leading by more than 2.5 points. Currently, the president has lawsuits.
Closely contested elections in places like Nevada, Arizona, North Carolina, and Wisconsin.
And to that point, you bring up the North Carolina results. 94% of the vote is in, to show just how close things are. I believe 73,000 votes. You look at the total in for Joe Biden and President Trump, divides them. So as we await the final call in that state, a lot of this could come down, Dan, to the state of Nevada, where we knew that we were not going to get any additional reporting from that state per our election desk till today. So we'll see what happened. This could be the next state called. 75% of the vote in. You've got those blue counties, obviously, that we've been watching. Clark County. You've got Reno. You've got Las Vegas. Those counties go heavily to Joe Biden. We're waiting on some of those more rural counties. Nye County, for example, 70% to Donald Trump right now, very heavily leaning towards President Trump. We'll see where the count comes in.
Narrowing as some of these city areas come in. In Nevada, very close. Former Vice President Biden is up by 7,647 votes there. North Carolina, President Trump is up by 76,000 votes, still waiting for calls on those states. Bill Hemmer is here to break it down. Back at the board, never leaves. Bill, give us a sense.
He was raring to go earlier.
Yeah,
exactly.
I tell you, I saw something here, guys. I'll get it to the end if you give me a moment here. And I mean, this is really going to be something else. This is Georgia right now. David Perdue's the Republican fighting for re-election. He needs to get 50.0% of the vote to avoid a runoff. Look where he is right now.
Wow.
in the state of Georgia. I'll come back to that, let you know the balance of power in the Senate, what all that means, and you guys know the significance of it, and you get a runoff in January, et cetera. Why don't we start at a baseline? You guys just mentioned the critical states. Let me run through, as of 10 o'clock East Coast time, now in the 11 a.m. hour, this is roughly our estimates in these various states. I'll start in Georgia. You got a 0.4 difference between the president and Joe Biden, still a 0.4% lead. We believe statewide there are 91,000 votes outstanding. And the difference there, as Martha just mentioned, about 18,000 votes. We also believe of the 90,000 estimate statewide, 62,000 are here in some of the Democratic hotbeds of Georgia. That's Atlanta, which is Fulton County, and possibly DeKalb County to the east as well. So just to punch on Fulton, no percentage breakdown, but you got to split Joe Biden well over 2-to-1 votes here in Fulton County. We believe there are 16,000 votes outstanding, roughly, in Fulton County. You know, we got an update just about 30 minutes ago. We believe there are roughly about maybe some 28,000 votes in DeKalb County as well, and those have been breaking toward Joe Biden's favor. In Pennsylvania, this is where we think the race is at the moment, about a 2-point lead now for the president, shrinking a little bit overnight. Here's where it gets catchy. We think there are 700,000 outstanding votes statewide, and Joe Biden trails at the moment by 135,000. So just in the past hour, that came from 143,000 votes down to, well, a decrease of 7,000. Here's where it gets interesting. This is Philadelphia. This is where Democrats win in this state, and that's history shows it. Hillary Clinton had 84% of the vote in 2016. As of this year, as of this hour, we believe with Joe Biden with a, sorry, let me punch out of that just to make sure I'm in the right spot here. Yeah, with about 140,000 vote deficit, Philadelphia has about 250,000 votes outstanding. At the moment, Joe Biden's getting, as you can see, 8 out of 10 of those votes. If that continues at that rate, he's going to pick up about 146,000, which would give him a slight lead in Philadelphia. And then we're going to see how the rest of the state fills in. The Trump campaign still maintains you got a lot of rural votes that can help offset that. And we'll see when we tabulate this up whether or not that is still the case today. We've got time for Nevada. I'll just let you know what we get. By the way, noon Eastern time is when the Secretary of State gives us the latest information, so that's about 45 minutes away. We thought we would get this yesterday afternoon. Then we thought we would get it last night. So it's been pushed to today, and we'll see how many votes they come out when that happens. Here's the state of the race. Joe Biden has about a point, well, now it's a 0.4 percentage lead on the president. Sorry. Apologies, it's early. Math is not my strong suit, but I'm doing it live. 0.7% lead for Joe Biden. 167,000 statewide votes outstanding. This is Clark County. This is Las Vegas. This is Reno, Washoe up here in the Northwest. So Clark County, we believe there are about 120,000 votes outstanding. And Joe Biden so far has been getting about 53% of those votes. Back in 2016, here is where Hillary Clinton did in Clark County. In 2020, the president's doing better at the margins here. But, you know, Las Vegas has been hit hard by this economy and by COVID and by the lockdowns. And the Trump campaign's making a case that a lot of people are getting ballots that don't live there anymore. We'll see if that plays out as well. Here in Arizona, I know there's a lot of dispute given our call from the other night. We're standing by it, and this is where it stands at the moment. You've got 2.4 percentage point lead for Joe Biden. We think there are about 280,000 votes outstanding, and the president trails by about 68,000 votes. This is Phoenix. This is Tucson down here. This is where you get the mother lode in the state of Arizona. This is the coin of the realm, really. And these voters were breaking for Joe Biden the other night. It gave our decision team an inclination as to what was happening in the other part of the state. You had a heavy volume of votes come in. Joe Biden, with about 140,000 estimate votes outstanding in Maricopa County, Joe Biden's been getting about 51% of those. Now, the Trump team is still saying they're in the game here. I can tell you last night at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock here, watching this board, we got a batch of votes that came in, and the president picked up about 70,000 votes. So that this is the margin in Maricopa at the moment, and this is the margin statewide. and Arizona as well. And I just, I mentioned that Senate race because there's going to be a bit of a shift now in the focus to the balance of power eventually, if and when this presidential race is decided. Here's where we are. Democrats at 48, Republicans at 48. We believe Dan Sullivan, Alaska, he's got a clear lead here, 2-1. The race has not yet been called, so we believe that'll be a pickup for Republicans. This is Tom Tillis, just to check in today. So these numbers haven't changed from last night. About a 2-point lead for Tom Tillis. If he holds on to that, certainly that would give you the margin of plus 50 for Republicans in the U.S. Senate. Here is where it gets really interesting, guys. Georgia has 2 Senate races. We know one's going to a runoff on January 5th, and the other one is real close to being in the same situation. So we'll watch whether or not David Perdue can hold off his challenger here. I mentioned the margin there. To avoid the runoff, you have to be at this number and at this percentage. And right now, what I told you about the Democratic, the blue counties that still have yet to check in with some votes, we'll see whether or not Perdue can maintain this advantage. If he does, this goes to 51. If he doesn't, both of these Senate races now will go to a runoff 2 months from today. And if the balance of power in Congress is still hanging out there 2 months from today, as I told Laura late last night, I bet you a buck that these will be the most expensive Senate campaigns in the history of the country by a mile.
Yeah.
And that will determine the outcome for who controls the Senate.
So, Bill, I wanted to stay there for one second. First of all, 8 out of the 10 most expensive Senate races ever happened in 2020.
Wow.
And it would have been, if you get 2 of those runoffs, they're going to put hundreds of millions of dollars down there. I am being told that there is a lot of pressure on the National Senate, Republican Senate Committee to get in the game on challenging and looking at paper ballots in Georgia to make sure, from their point of view, that David Perdue gets above that 50% threshold and doesn't need to go to a runoff, thereby ensuring that even if they lose one, they hold on to the Senate control. They think that Tom Tillis is in a point where we're going to eventually call that, and our people are saying it's heading that way, at least the vote that they're looking at now. But the balance of power, people on Wall Street are saying one of the reasons the market is just going up is because the prospect of a GOP Senate changes the dynamic with how a possible Joe Biden president would deal with taxes and the Supreme Court and everything else.
Not to mention the possibility of adding Puerto Rico and D.C., which would change the dynamic of the Senate completely. So Wall Street likes that potential for a split power in the White House and on the Hill.
Where is the rest of the vote in Georgia?
The rest of, well, we
don't know.
Question. No, we don't. With mail ballots, we don't know. But we do know what the margins are right now, and they're getting smaller by the hour. That's clear. I would also point out, and you guys mentioned this near the top, I mean, this was the game, right? It was 270. Arizona is still blue, and Joe Biden's hanging out here waiting on Nevada. That's going to come in 44 minutes. What does that vote look like? How many more ballots are out there? With an 8,000 vote, 7,600 vote margin, do you make a call on something like that? If you do that, you go from 264 to 270, and that could possibly happen at noon Eastern time. Maybe, maybe not. For the president, well, listen, we think he's going to win Alaska, right? I talked about the margins in Georgia. If he can fight and hang on there, do we go to a court battle in Georgia? Do you keep it red? If you do, you're at 233. You mentioned the Tillis race. It seems to be, I've looked at these numbers, guys, for 2 days now. It seems that the vote in North Carolina hasn't moved, so let's keep that red for now. And now you're at 248. You're really still, you're waiting on this thing, Nevada, and you're waiting on this thing here in Pennsylvania. Is that days away? Is that weeks away? Do you get these legal challenges that drag on for some time to the courts? I think, Martha, you and I were talking yesterday. It's December 12th, I think, right? We need to certify the vote for the electors in Washington, D.C. I think that's right on the calendar. If you could pull this off in Pennsylvania, you're knocking on the door at 268. And then it's either this, guys. It's either that, under that scenario,
or he runs the table.
Or it's this.
Yeah. Right. Let's put up the 4 states, really, that we're watching and the vote differential, and you see that on the screen. This really gives you a sense, Bill, of how close it is in these various states, especially in some place like Pennsylvania, where we're seeing the vote from Philadelphia and the Democratic counties coming in. Georgia at 18,000 votes, Nevada at 7,600, North Carolina 76,000. Seems like North Carolina is separating a bit, but that is the vote differential in each one of these 4 states, and it really gives you a sense as we modify that throughout the day as the count comes in. We'll put this graphic up to show people how close it is.
It's a baseline, Brett, for sure.
All right, Bill, thanks so much.
5 a.m. in the East, and this is a Fox News alert. Moments ago, Joe Biden taking the lead in Georgia, an historically red state won by President Trump in 2016. It's important to note, vital to note, the race has not yet been called. These are just the latest numbers into the Fox News decision desk. 16 electoral votes still up for grabs.
Right now, Joe Biden has just taken a narrow lead by 917 votes with 99% reporting. That is a state where a Democrat hasn't carried the White House since 1992 and Bill Clinton. To Pennsylvania we go. That race is tightening. The president leads by 0.3% with 97% reporting. President Trump leading by just 18,000 votes. In Nevada, Biden up by roughly a point with 84% reporting. Biden leading there by a little over 11,000 votes. And in North Carolina, the president up by a point and a half, 94% reporting. President Trump leading by 76,000 votes there. And in Arizona, a state Fox News has called for Biden, he is up with a point and a half, 90% reporting.
If you're looking at the score, essentially, for the presidency of the United States, you will see that in the last couple of minutes, while he had been way ahead for a long time, Donald Trump is now trailing Joe Biden in the Keystone State of Pennsylvania. Mr. Biden now has a 5,500-point lead as they continue the counting, and there's still more to go. And as you have noticed throughout our telecast this morning, also in the state of Georgia, Joe Biden now has about a 1,000-point lead as well, Ainsley.
Right, from Eric in Philadelphia there to the big board as we take a look at what's happening in Pennsylvania. At this hour, just moments ago, we got word that Joe Biden is now leading in this state by a very small margin, although he is leading now. 10 minutes ago, as we walked down to studio, President Trump was still in the lead. Here's the difference. And with 98% of the vote in now, the difference is 5,594 votes, by which Joe Biden is leading the president. So that is the news at this hour. Of course, Pennsylvania is key. That is the big 20 electoral votes that we are watching there. You now go down to Georgia, where the heat is on in this race. Right now, it is neck and neck, as you can see, 49.4% to 49.4% of the vote for Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. When it comes to Georgia's 16 electoral votes, obviously key. If Biden can claim victory here, he wins the race. He tops 270 in the Electoral College. When it comes down to the counties that we are watching and what made the difference here and why Joe Biden was able to take the lead overnight, Clayton County, this is where they were tallying votes well into the night last night, into the wee hours of the morning this morning. Clayton County went 87% of the votes went to Joe Biden there. Those came in and made all the difference this morning. As you can see, Joe Biden, 85% of the vote in Clayton County. You look back at the election in 2016, that is about even with what we saw as far as performance by Hillary Clinton in that county. What we're waiting on now is Gwinnett County, Georgia. This could make all the difference as well. In Gwinnett County, we're hearing that about 4,800 more votes have to be tallied there. You look in 2016, how important this was in the race there. Joe Biden right now is leading by a bigger margin than Hillary Clinton in that county in Georgia. So we're watching that. And of course, important to point out that when it comes to Clayton and Gwinnett counties, they are the surrounding counties to Fulton County, of course, home to Atlanta, Georgia. So we're watching all of that. If I back out here, I'll bring in Byron York in just a second. Take a look at the big map. Pennsylvania, where Joe Biden, we can now say, is leading at this hour. Georgia, of course, North Carolina, President Trump still maintains a lead there. He is topping 50% at this hour, 94% of the votes in, and broadening that out even more. Nevada still very much in play. Of course, the 6 electoral votes there could make all the difference for Joe Biden. You've got Joe Biden with the lead there, 84% of the votes in. So we're watching all of this at this hour. And Byron York, of course, looking at Philadelphia County, waiting on the additional votes there. You're reminded of the 75,000 absentee ballots. Obviously, that is adding to the confusion as we work our way through this day. Allegheny County, 310,000 absentee ballots there. So election officials do say on the ground that they do expect it to be done counting votes by end of day. The big news at this hour is that Joe Biden has just taken the lead in the state of Pennsylvania. Difference of votes, 5,600, 98% of the vote in. That's a 0.1% advantage Joe Biden has. And I want to finish off with this because the Trump campaign just put out a statement. In it, it talks about each and every one of the states and saying the election is not over, calling it a false projection that Joe Biden is a winner. They say that is based on results in 4 states that are far from final. While we're talking about Pennsylvania, in this statement, what the Trump campaign says, there were many irregularities in Pennsylvania, including having election officials prevent our volunteer team, legal observers, from having meaningful access to vote counting locations. That is a brand new statement from the Trump campaign at this hour. Again, we'll hear from officials on the ground there in just a short time from now. Trace, that. But take a look at where things stand at this hour. You're just getting the update on the ground in Georgia, where a recount may be needed. It is so close there, razor-thin margins. You heard from the Secretary of State saying a moment ago, too close to call. There would be a recount, huge implications for the entire country. And you look at the differential right now at this hour, 1,098 votes. Kristen Soltis-Anderson, pollster and Fox News contributor. Kristen, I know you were listening to every word of what came out of that press conference just now. I know you have been focusing on these blue counties around Fulton County, Atlanta, Georgia area. Some of these, Clayton County made a big difference overnight, put Joe Biden's vote total over the top, putting him in the lead in that state. We're also watching Henry County, Newton County, all these surrounding areas, but specifically Gwinnett County. You just heard the Secretary of State referencing that county a few moments ago. They had technical problems, a software glitch. It led to a recount of the votes there, and then they got to the absentee votes. So we're awaiting a vote total from there. That too could make a difference. Good morning to you, Kristen.
Good morning. As I'm looking at somewhere like Gwinnett County, I've got 3 questions I'm asking. The first is how many ballots are still left? The second is where are they coming from within that county? And if we can know that. And then third, what type of ballot are we talking about? So in this case, in Georgia, you have just under 4,000 votes from Gwinnett County, which is the sort of place where Democrats have really made inroads in recent years. It's a county that I believe went for Hillary Clinton by only about 6 points. But this time around, Biden seems to have widened his lead there. So more ballots from Gwinnett County ought to be good news for Biden. However, there was another big number in that press conference, and that was the 8,000 outstanding military ballots in Georgia. Those ballots might be much redder, much more pro-Trump than what you would see from just one single county like Gwinnett County. Now, not all 8,000 of those ballots might be returned. They might not all get back in by tonight, but those are the 2 big numbers. Less than 4,000 in Gwinnett, 8,000 military ballots coming in. That's going to be the big things that I'll be watching in the next 24 hours.
I just brought up Cobb County as well, northwest of Fulton County, Atlanta, Georgia, where the vote total right now has Biden in the lead, 56.3%. 56,000 makes the vote total difference there. He said there's 75,000 ballots still outstanding. So all of these counties will be a focus. Take us into Pennsylvania now. We're at the top of the 9 a.m. hour. It was declared that Joe Biden was leading President Trump with votes in that state. Here's the differential now, 6,826 votes in Joe Biden's favor. What are you watching here? Obviously, pointing out that Philadelphia County is under close watch with Joe Biden, 81% of the vote there. Allegheny County, another blue county we have been watching. Joe Biden, 59% of the total there. 128,000 is the difference in Allegheny County. Both of those very closely watching. Kristen, what are you watching in Philadelphia?
Yeah, in Pennsylvania, we're dealing with much larger numbers either way in terms of the margin between the candidates as well as the number of votes that are outstanding and the types of places they're coming from. I mean, in a city like Philadelphia, you would expect, not only because it's Philadelphia, because it's the city, it tends to be a very big Democratic stronghold, but because a lot of the ballots we're counting at this stage of the game in Pennsylvania are those mail-in ballots. That's another reason why you're seeing that kind of blue shift later on. We knew going into this election that Pennsylvania would be the kind of state where early on they would count all of those day of votes, and those were likely to lean very heavily for President Trump because he said, look, I want my voters to show up on Election Day. But for Democrats, they had pushed their voters more to vote late or vote, early via mail, those ballots coming in and then being counted on the back end. That's why you're suddenly seeing this swing of many, many, many points. Now, there's a county in Pennsylvania that you should watch, and that's Bucks County. It's right outside of Philadelphia.
I'm bringing it up on the board.
It's the
Bucks
suburbs
County.
there. It's a county that...
Go ahead, Kristen.
Yeah, it's split very closely between Trump and Clinton in 2016. This time around, Biden seems to have grown his lead there very slightly. Again, it's the exact type of county that Democrats have really tried to make efforts to win over in the last couple of years. If there are still ballots outstanding there, they won't be breaking nearly as heavily for Biden as you might see within Philadelphia County itself. And so depending on which precincts are out within that county and which types of ballots are still out within that county, that's going to make a big difference.
Yeah, out of the almost 400,000 votes counted so far, there's a differential of 14,200. Kristen, you went through election night Tuesday night with us, with Trace and me on the Fox Broadcast Network, and we talked about so many things. And here we are, several days following Election Day. You've got these 4 key battlegrounds that we were watching so closely on election night, where no decision has been made. These races have not been called yet. Obviously, a win in any of those would put Joe Biden over the top, including Nevada, would bring him to an even 270. Donald Trump would have to run the board with these 4 remaining states. Did you see us being here on the Friday morning after Election Day, Kristen?
Well, I always knew it might be possible with Pennsylvania because we knew the vote count would be slower there. I don't think I thought that it would be so many states still in the game at this stage. But what's going to be really interesting is as we unpack things like that Fox News voter analysis, trying to understand the story of this election. Again, no winner has been called, but as we try to figure out what were the groups that shifted one way or the other, I'm still fascinated by some of these trends. You know, we have looked at the data, and you can see that in some of these precincts across the country where there are particularly large Latino populations, Donald Trump's numbers went way, way up. Clearly, that has paved an interesting path forward for the GOP. But at the same time, Democrats, and particularly Joe Biden, expanding his lead with moderate and independent voters compared to what Hillary Clinton did 4 years ago. So we're watching both of the parties' coalitions change in real time as these election results continue to come in.
If you could finish off with Nevada for us, knowing that this state has not been called yet and could make all the difference. 11,400 votes makes the difference there, with Joe Biden leading by almost a full percentage point in that state. Obviously, some of the key counties that we watched in favor of Donald Trump, Elko County, a solid 76% of the vote there. But what are we watching here? I mean, there's the magic as to why our election desk hasn't called this state yet, but there's a pretty decisive lead by Joe Biden in that state at this hour.
Yeah, and I think at the moment, part of the reason why you're seeing Biden perhaps favored, though the race is not called yet, is because of Clark County. That's where you've got Las Vegas, huge Democratic stronghold again. And I think I believe that's where we're going to be looking to see how those votes come in the end.
All right, Kristen, thank you very much.
Let's just play this out here as these numbers come in.
Yeah, 11 o'clock East Coast time. I'll tell you where we stand right now. I'll take you around the 4 or 5 states that are now being part of the national discussion and really global discussion. Here in North Carolina, the numbers haven't changed much, still at 94% in. Last night with the decision team, they said North Carolina stopped counting. This is still favored for the president. So too is the Senate race in North Carolina. We'll see if there are adjustments to be made in the Tar Heel state. This is Georgia. This started shifting late into the evening last night. It shifted again earlier today. At the moment, we've got Biden and Trump tied percentage-wise, but the difference favors Biden by a margin of about 1,579 votes as of this hour. Other votes are out there. They believe there are 8,000 votes from overseas or absentee that are set set to be arrived still. They also believe there are about 8,000 statewide yet to be counted. That's an estimate now. The majority of them are here in Gwinnett County, which is a suburb northeast of Atlanta. It's blue, but not as dominant as you would find perhaps down here in Atlanta, Fulton County, which went over 70% for Joe Biden, over here in DeKalb County, which was 83% for Joe Biden, or even down here south of the city in Clayton County, which is well over 80% as well. Gwinnett here, 4,800, we believe, outstanding ballots, and all likelihood they're going to favor Joe Biden. Down here, southeast part of the state, this is Lawrence County here. Heavily favored for the president. Not as many votes as you would find in Gwinnett or DeKalb or clearly Fulton County. Difference of more than 6,400 votes. There still are 1,797 votes to be counted in this county as of the Secretary of State's office in Atlanta from last hour. So we will watch that and see whether or not there's a difference to be made up there. Take you out to Nevada right now. This is what we believe happens at 1 o'clock Eastern time, so 2 hours from now. We believe Las Vegas down here, Reno up in the northwest. This is Clark County. This is really where, this is the difference maker many times in this state. Joe Biden now taking 53% of the vote received in Clark County. We believe there are 51,000 votes still outstanding in Clark County, a difference of 64,000. So if Joe Biden continues at his current rate of 53%, he would take a slight majority of those votes from Las Vegas. So stand by for that. Put it on your calendar. Again, coming up shortly from Clark County. Arizona now. We could get some information, guys, in a moment here. Maricopa County, that is Phoenix, we believe. As of sometime within this hour, we should get more votes tabulated from Maricopa County. We think there are about 200,000 estimate in Maricopa County. At the moment, the difference in Arizona is 60,000 between Biden and Trump, and we'll see whether or not that moves throughout the day here. Take you back to Philadelphia now and Pennsylvania. A lot of focus right now. The margin, 6,800 favoring Joe Biden. Down here in Philadelphia, I can tell you, at last check, there were 150,000 statewide ballots to be counted. 50,000, so a third of them, estimate-wise, were here in the county in the city of Philadelphia. Joe Biden's been getting 80% of those ballots. If that continues, by math, he would pick up another 40,000 votes in Philadelphia County. So just come out to the state. Hang on one second. We'll go back in and add the 40,000 potentially to the 6,800. You can see the difference there in Pennsylvania. So then, that leaves us to the point to ask ourselves, how do you get to 270 based on what we believe is the state of the race today? And again, this could change. But right now, here is what we see. Alaska has not been called, but we do believe, given Dan Sullivan's lead out there and what we're seeing in Alaska, the 3 electoral votes in all likelihood will be awarded to the president. He'd be at 217. Let's say North Carolina, as I described, stays the way it is. He's at 232. Down here in Georgia, let's see what happens in Lawrence County, as I mentioned. Let's see what happens with the overseas military votes. If he were to come back and retake the lead on Joe Biden, pending court cases or how they do a recount in Georgia, he'd be at 248. Pennsylvania, I haven't clicked just yet. So even if you get Nevada, you're at 254. And this, Brett and Martha, is where we come back into the conversation here and talk about the significance and the importance of determining an outcome in the Keystone State. If the president were to get it, he'd be at 274. But at the moment, it appears that that is getting further and further from his grasp. And if you make a call for Joe Biden at 264, the math is pretty obvious. In Pennsylvania, that would give him 284 electoral
And he would
votes.
become the president-elect of the United States.
That is correct. And I'll take it just a step further, too. If you want to play with the math here, depending what happens out here in Nevada, you take that away from the president and you give it to Joe Biden if he maintains his lead in Arizona. If you come back in Maricopa County and the surrounding rural counties around Las Vegas, and you come back here, sorry guys, let me just go try and do this here. Okay, it's locking me out here. You can see a scenario, however, when you hold North Carolina, and you hold Georgia, but you lose Pennsylvania, and you take Nevada, you're at 251. Let me try it one more time. It's not going to give it.
It's locked because we called it.
Yeah. Right, correct, for the moment. You're right about that. What I was trying to show, however, is if he comes back in Arizona, Joe Biden would be at 306, and Donald Trump would be around 232 electoral votes. You go back to 2016 right now. Donald Trump got 306 electoral votes 4 years ago. 2 faithless electors from Texas did not cast their ballot for him in Washington, D.C. Hillary Clinton is at 232. She lost 5 electors after her defeat from 2016. Point is, on that scenario that I was trying to show you there, you would find the exact same math amount with the Electoral College that we had 4 years ago.
The places where we're still waiting for these numbers to come in. Hey, Bill.
High noon here on the East Coast. Martha, Brett, good afternoon to you. There is a lot of information that is new this hour, and I want to take you through it, show you a few scenarios. I want to start here in Nevada. About 35 minutes ago, we did get more information out of Nevada. What I would tell the viewer at home as you look at all the data on the map here, just keep an eye on this number up here. That's the vote difference in raw numbers between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Last night, that number was around 11,000. In the past hour, it doubled over 22,000, and then it just ticked down just a little bit, about 1,500. We believe most of those votes come from Clark County, Nevada. That's where you find Las Vegas. That's where Democrats go in that state to find votes. Culinary Union, very strong out there. And Joe Biden, you look at the difference here, just to make this point here. He's got a 75,000 vote lead in Clark County alone as of now, so we will watch that. Also, Philadelphia over in the East Coast, pop out a little bit of Nevada and come in here. We expect a news conference. Philadelphia, Harrisburg officials giving us information at 12:30 Eastern time, so that's coming up 30 minutes from now. This number here, guys, at the top is now 8,800. When we started our coverage about, well, several hours ago, it was at 6,800. Then it popped up over 9,000. Now it's come down slightly to where it is now below 9,000. We believe at the moment, just clear that off here, this is Philadelphia, major focus on Philadelphia, the county and the city there. We believe the state has about 125,000 votes outstanding, 25,000 of which come here from Philadelphia. And just look at the raw number here. Joe Biden now is at 553,000 raw votes. If he continues this percentage of the next 25,000 outstanding votes in Philadelphia, he's going to get roughly, let's say, 25 times 8, you're talking 17, 18,000 more votes at least. Just watch it here and go back to 2016 and look what Hillary Clinton's raw number was. He is knocking on the door of being right there where she was, just about 7,000 raw votes off. So we'll keep an eye on that. 12:30 news conference coming up. Now, we talked about this last hour. Joe Biden at the moment, 264 electoral votes. The president's at 214. We believe that right now Alaska will go Republican for the benefit of the doubt. It's 2-1.
Do we know why we can't call Alaska back?
Yeah, there are no eyes and ears on the ground in Alaska. And the mail ballot issue.
We could have gotten a plane there. Right
yes, you could have. I mean, we could have gone there. Dan, I can tell you, the Republican Dan Sullivan is up 2-1. I'm going to show you that Senate race in a moment here, though. So there's a clear lead for the Republican side, but with the mail balloting and vast expanse between Anchorage and Fairbanks, et cetera, our decision team can't give us a call on that at the moment. Here's what's relevant as of noon on the East Coast. Joe Biden's in 264. If that lead in Nevada continues for him or stays where it is, in all likelihood, he will be on his way to being at 270 in the next president of the United States. If it doesn't hold up, but however, the lead back here in Pennsylvania, if that holds up, that would clearly be enough to give him the lead for the White House and ultimately president-elect in January of 2021. Now, here's what I want to do for you, okay? We tried this last hour. I think it was user error, so I'll try it yet again here. Let's say Joe Biden keeps Pennsylvania. Let's say Alaska stays in the Republican column. North Carolina has been holding firm for Republicans. Let's say the president keeps that. He's at 232. But if Nevada checks in for the blue team, Joe Biden is at 290. I don't know what happens in Georgia. You get a statewide recount. It could go on for weeks down there. But if the president were able to take that, he'd be at 248, but still well below the margin you need at 270. So what happens ultimately? Maybe it's late November or early December, many weeks from now. What if Joe Biden's able to keep that slim margin of a lead he has at the moment in Georgia of 1,584 votes? He would then be at 306 electoral votes, and the president would be at 232. Just hold on to those numbers now, and I'll take you back. Hang on, hang with me here. I got you. Okay. So this was 2016. Donald Trump was actually at 306. 2 electors left him. Hillary Clinton was at 232. 5 electors left her. 4 years later, it's possible under that scenario that we could be in the same situation we were with the Electoral College that we saw in 2016. One last thing here in the U.S. Senate, guys, and I'll give it back to you here. Watching this very closely, what I would keep an eye on is the tally up here in the upper right-hand corner. You're at 48-48 to begin the campaign. I mentioned Dan Sullivan, right? If he holds on that, Republicans go to 49. Tom Tillis in North Carolina, if he holds on to this race, Republicans go to 50. In Georgia, we know one race is going to a runoff in early January. And look at this now. This is the other Senate race in the state of Georgia. David Perdue needs to be at 50% plus 1 vote in order to avoid a runoff 2 months from yesterday. In the afternoon yesterday, Brett and Martha, he was at 50.0 and then just slipped below that point to 49.9888. And now his margin is dropping even more. And just to put a fine point on it, his Democratic challenger has 98,000 raw votes in Georgia. Where do the remaining votes come from, and which way are they divvied up? It could be that this margin would be too much for Perdue to overcome, and you would have, in the state of Georgia, in 2 months, 2 Senate races.
All right, so let's just say they call Sullivan.
The amount of money spent on those races, and you will then have the balance of power hanging there in Congress for.
So, Bill, if they call Sullivan, which we expect to, then we call Tom Tillis in North Carolina. We haven't done that. Then you're up to 50-48, right?
Yep.
And then you've got 2 runoffs, let's say, in Georgia. Then let's say Georgia splits 1-1. It's 51-49 GOP control. If they lose both, it would be 50-50 with potentially a Joe Biden presidency and a Vice President Harris, Kamala Harris being the tiebreaker, and then a Democratic Senate.
And there's another chance, too. You got 2 Senate runoffs in the state of Georgia. If you get both of them, regardless.
Republican.
Correct. The focus of the country, once this presidential race is sorted out, will be right back down here in the American Southeast in Georgia.
I know some great places in Atlanta.
I remember a few as well. But the Peach State is going to be where all the action is, Brett and Martha, for the next 2 months. And they're going to spend a ton of cash.
Bill, how many, I'm just looking again at Pennsylvania. We all keep going back to Pennsylvania here just for a second. You've got 879 votes that increased Biden's lead here coming in from Bucks County, which is an area that we've been watching very closely. But we're waiting for additional votes in 61 counties. They also expect more absentee votes coming in, I believe from 30%. 30% of the counties have reported absentee votes. So there is how much votes still coming in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, they're counting. And Martha, and it's changing by the hour. Not by a ton, but a little bit here and there. And in this election, everything matters. Again, I just want to repeat, we believe statewide about 120,000 votes estimate still to be counted, of which 25,000 are thought to be in Philadelphia. Also, I was just looking at this map, and I'll just give you a sense of what's happening statewide. You see all the red out there. You know where the president campaigned. He was sitting places like, well, pop down here to Beaver County, and you see the margin he had there. Down here in Greene County as well. Margins are huge. You can move your way across the southern border of Pennsylvania. You're close to 84%. Same is true over here in Franklin County. Pop up here to Perry, and also I believe this is, yeah, that's Cumberland County, just an edge for the president in that county. But, I mean, the rural votes really came in, and he drove up his margins from what he did in 2016. And just to give you a sense about how Pennsylvania broke this year, I'll take you back 8 years. This is 2012. This is Barack Obama and Mitt Romney. The president 4 years ago flipped 3 counties. They're hard to see. One's Erie. One's Luzerne, and one's Northampton right here. So in 2016, he did the trick in those 3 counties. So far, the tally in 2020 flips Northampton back for the blue team. I mean, look at the margin here.
Yep.
I mean, quick math, that's less than 1,000 votes there. And up here in Erie County, blue-collar part of the state here, right on Lake Erie, Joe Biden came back and, at the moment, holds a 1-point lead. And for Hillary Clinton, you see now why the Trump team was targeting certain parts of the country with such ferocity. They knew the margins had to be in their favor in order to win places like Pennsylvania. But how you offset what's going on in Philadelphia and how you overcome your deficit in Allegheny County, which is Pittsburgh, is just, it's too high of a hurdle at the moment for the president to come back over this. Allegheny County, a margin of 105,000. Here's Philadelphia County, margin is 455,000. And that's where they're banking the votes on the blue team and for Joe Biden so far in 2020.
Well, I'm just thinking back to the day just a couple days ago when President Trump was holding a rally in western Pennsylvania, and the Biden campaign had a lid on, and then suddenly he pops up in Chester, Pennsylvania, because those margins, everybody was aware, were going to be so incredibly close.
It's a great point.
It feels like a year ago.
It feels like a year ago. And I just want to also point out, I was listening to Trace this morning, was interviewing the head of the state legislature in Pennsylvania at Republican legislature, and then they've got, of course, the Democrat controlled state Supreme Court. So he was saying that he believes that there must be a recount in Philadelphia to put to rest some of these concerns on the Republican side.
That's something we really haven't talked about.
That may very well happen.
We haven't talked about the next step here, the next official step, Bill, and that is the certification of all these states' ballots, which happens on the state legislature level, and you have different dates for different states. They start at about November 20th, and there's like the 23rd, 24th. There's some that go into December, but the official certification happens as the state. And sometimes you have a Secretary of State that's a Democrat and a state legislature that's a Republican. You know, we're going to get to a place where you're going to have a definitive count, but there's going to be recounts here.
And let's remember that the tug that has gone on between those two entities in Pennsylvania is how you ended up with a system where you have votes that could come in. They are supposed to be postmarked by Election Day, supposed to be is a big phrase there, and then they can be counted until today. They could be accepted, I should say, until today. You also have this wishy-washiness over the postmark and whether or not it's mandatory, and the signature and whether or not it needs to match exactly, which is, I mean, you could drive a truck through those two stipulations in Pennsylvania. So, you know, right now you've got Pennsylvania 9,000 votes apart. I believe, Bill, you said we're like 125,000 votes from being done. So, you know, just things to bear in mind as we watch Pennsylvania.
There's
Here's the calendar to watch now. I mean, this makes your point, Martha and Brett. The deadline's 5 o'clock today and Friday in Pennsylvania to accept absentee ballots. In Nevada, it's next Tuesday, the 10th. In North Carolina, it's the following Thursday, the 12th. I would make a point here, just in the closing 48 hours of this campaign, really the closing 24 hours of the campaign. You mentioned Chester County. That's where Joe Biden popped up. He also, Barack Obama was in Philadelphia.
Right.
Over that weekend into that Monday. And so, too, was Joe Biden on Election Day with a megaphone on the sidewalks of Philadelphia urging people to get out the vote. So point being, they knew where to go for the vote in Pennsylvania, and they may have had an idea that it was going to be as close as we've been watching now as well.
And we are hearing that 12:30 Eastern Time, we will get election officials in Philadelphia to come out and give us an update. You know, we were talking about the absentee ballots and the whole Supreme Court decision to segregate the ballots that come after that date. The question is, how many of those are there? And are there enough to challenge the difference in the race. If some court said, you know what, you have to throw out all these ballots, are there enough there that change the outcome of the race? And that's where we are.
In Georgia, you can make the case because they're already going to a recount statewide, and this is the reason, Brett and Martha. You're about 1,500 votes difference between Biden and Trump, and there's still some remaining ballots out there. I mentioned Gwinnett County, northeast of Atlanta, not as blue as Fulton County and DeKalb, but still pretty Democratic solidly. Down here, we're told about 1,700 ballots are outstanding. That's on the red team, favor 2-1 President Trump. So at the moment, you got a difference of 6,400 in that county alone. So there's still some, this number, sorry guys, apologize, user error. This number is going to change, but not dramatically, and we'll see throughout the day. But if they're going to an automatic statewide recount, it will not begin until at least November 14th, based on state law, and that is a week from tomorrow. And after that, they said it'll take at least a minimum of 7 days to get that count done.
They've been very diligent watching them, how they handle this in Georgia.
As have you, Bill.
And I don't think you should be so hard on yourself,
You really
Bill.
shouldn't.
I mean, user error is, you know, I don't know.
You talked your way through it very well.
Appreciate that. Thanks. But listen, I got some notes here, and I got to make sure that what's on the screen and matches this thing. So I'll try better.
We'll head back in a little bit. Thanks, Bill.
Here is the state. I was listening to a conversation, very interesting. We'll see what goes down at 5 o'clock Eastern time. I was just in touch with Lee Ross, our producer on the ground there in Las Vegas. They believe now, this number's jumped around all day, frankly. They believe now, statewide in Nevada, you got 150,000 estimate votes outstanding. That leaves about 63,000 here in Clark County, which is deep, well, I don't want to say deep blue, but slightly blue this year for Joe Biden. That's Las Vegas, and yeah, 63,000 outstanding. Difference here of 75,000 votes thus far in Las Vegas. The statewide difference here is at 20,000. And, okay, so that's that. Reno here, Las Vegas down here. Dana, I was just looking at this. You can interrupt me anytime. It's okay. I was just watching Georgia. It's changed quite a bit today. Ever since a lot of folks got up on the East Coast, they probably went to bed last night. It was at one number, and right now it's down to this number here, 1,557. If you were listening to Newt Gingrich a few hours ago, he was talking about Savannah, Georgia. I was just checking on this a moment right before I came on the air. This is Chatham County, Georgia, okay? This is Savannah. Vice President Joe Biden, the former vice president, almost 58.5%. The raw vote is what I look at here, Dana, 78,000. From 2012, Barack Obama had 60,000. Hillary Clinton had almost 59,000 4 years ago. So 59,000, the president was at 43.6. In 2020, you're up to 78,000. That's a pretty healthy jump. For Joe Biden in Chatham County. That was Gingrich put it out there. I just wanted to check on the numbers, and we'll see how this plays out and how this works. But Chatham was slow to count, and the numbers came in late yesterday afternoon. But Georgia, that's our difference right now, about 1,500, and that will change. If I've got more time, Dana, I'll just check in on PA only because I haven't looked at it in some time. We're down to 13,324, the difference between Biden and Trump at the moment, Dana. 0.2%.
Right. My friend Bill Hemmer. Bill, what are you seeing?
Hey, Neil, this is a remarkable thing here. This is 2.4 million votes for Joe Biden and 2.4 million votes for Donald Trump in the state of Georgia. 49.4% to 49.4%. Just remarkable. We're watching this number two. The difference between two men is 1,544. And just watching the returns throughout the day here, we thought this Lawrence County, Georgia, had about 1,700 outstanding ballots. Apparently, they have been added to the list, actually. So you can take the 1,700 off in Lawrence County. We do know there's a fair amount of votes, as Steve was talking about, around Atlanta, surrounding metro area here. Gwinnett County is one of them. At daybreak, Neil, they thought they had a couple thousand out, but listening to the officials last hour in Atlanta, it seems less than 1,000, maybe around 700 to 800 here in Gwinnett County. Heavily Democratic, going for Joe Biden there. So we're going to see which way that breaks. And people were talking about Chatham County, which is Savannah, a bit earlier. I think this is interesting. I'll tell you, Neil, that, get out the vote, right? I mean, that's what the Trump team is. And they did a really good job during this election. You can scan the country and see the way they increased the vote. But in Savannah, Georgia, in Chatham County, I'll tell you, Joe Biden had 78,000 raw votes. Donald Trump had 53,000. 4 years ago, same margin, Hillary Clinton was 20,000 votes less. Donald Trump was 10,000 votes. So both teams, both campaigns did what they wanted to do. If you consider roughly a 2-to-1 margin between Biden and Trump, he's up 20,000 and he's up 10,000 over the previous performance from 4 years ago. The what-if scenario, I think also, Neil, this would be, I'll put it into motion for you a little bit. You know, you talk about 270. How do you get there? Joe Biden's at 264. Donald Trump right now at 214. If you were to click on, the margin in Nevada is 20,000 votes in favor of Joe Biden at the moment. If he were to get that, he'd have the magic number of 270. The number here in Pennsylvania has been tossing around all day long, a couple thousand here, a couple thousand there. Sometimes it's a couple hundred here and a couple hundred there. If the Keystone State were to be called, he would be the president-elect for January of 2021. I think also the more significant thing that's developing too, in addition to all this, the Senate races in Georgia, no matter who wins, Neil, if Georgia's the hotbed for who controls power in Congress, if you get 2 runoffs in Georgia the first week of January, and if Joe Biden holds on to that super slim lead and we find out late November or early in December that he's won that state, if Georgia goes blue, that's the first time that will happen since 1992, and you and I are going to be talking about shifting winds in the political sphere in places like this here in the Southeast. So hold on to that idea. When we get to it, we'll cover it, Neil.
He sees a clear path to victory, and he's doubling his margin in some of the outstanding states. Now, in Pennsylvania, to the race boards we go. In Pennsylvania, Biden doubling his margin from where we were yesterday, now ahead by more than 28,000. And in Georgia, where a recount has likely been determined, Biden increasing the narrow margin to just over 4,000. In Nevada, out west, Biden ahead by more than 22,000. That's 87% reporting, so a ways to go there. And in North Carolina, President Trump is maintaining his lead of roughly 76,000, where it was yesterday. Finally, out in Arizona, where Fox has called the race for Biden, he leads by nearly 30,000, which is roughly 1 percentage point. We'll see where that goes later today. The campaign, by the way, here, Biden's campaign waited late.
Is, of course, Georgia, where both seats now appear headed to runoffs on January 5th. Senator David Perdue facing a challenge from Democrat John Ossoff, while Senator Kelly Loeffler faces Democrat Raphael Warnock to fill the last 2 years of Senator Johnny Isakson's term. Georgia election law requires that a candidate get more than 50% of the vote to win without having a runoff. To North Carolina now, Senator Thom Tillis leading Democratic challenger Cal Cunningham by almost 100,000 votes. Around 171,000 ballots still need to be counted. In Alaska, Senator Dan Sullivan holding a hefty lead over independent Al Gross, but that race hasn't been called because only half the ballots have been counted. If Tillis and Sullivan win, Democrats would need to win both Georgia seats to split the Senate. Republicans lost only 1 total seat on Election Day, with Democrats flipping Arizona and Colorado, the GOP flipping Alabama.
Good morning to you, Neil. Well, there's no doubt that the Trump campaign and the Biden campaigns are focusing very closely on Arizona, Nevada, and Pennsylvania, and 3 counties, or 1 county in each of those states. So I'm going to start with Arizona because the Fox News Decision Desk and the Associated Press have called that for Joe Biden. But you can see the difference now is 27,963 votes. That lead for Joe Biden is narrowing. And the focus here is Maricopa County. It is a blue county where Biden is leading right now. But the latest numbers that we saw, 173 ballots are left, and 92,000 of them are in Maricopa County. Remember, some of those ballots are ballots that were provisional, but they were dropped off on Election Day. Those are believed to break for President Trump. Now let's go back and take a quick look at Nevada as well, because this is close. Even though it has 6 electoral votes, it could call the race for Joe Biden. He's leading right now 49.8%. The difference is 22,657 votes, with 87% of them in. Here we're watching Clark County. You've heard that name a lot. 53.7% leading for Biden, but about 90% of the votes are believed to come from there, and that's why this is so important important. Finally, I'm just going to go back and take a quick look at Pennsylvania. With its 20 electoral votes, it is so close now, 0.4 percentage points. We could see a recount here. The difference, only 28,877 votes. Philadelphia County right here, believed to break for Biden with the mail-in votes 3-1, is in focus, Neil.
Just incredible. And automatically, you know, to your point, no matter what you think about the process and all of that, there are automatic recounts here. So once we settle that and who's in the lead and whatever, and, you know, whether any news organization feels comfortable making a call, most of them are going to hold off barring a recount, right? So it just will keep things going and going and going. All right, Jackie DeAngelis, thank you very, very much.
The Fox News decision desk can now project that former Vice President Joe Biden will win Pennsylvania and Nevada, putting him over the 270 electoral votes he needs to become the 46th president of the United States.
Donald Trump, the 45th president of the United States, who stated in this process, "I will never give up fighting for you and our nation," will be denied a second term. That has not happened since 1992 and President George H.W. Bush. Keep in mind, the Trump campaign is in the midst of waging legal challenges in several states, but the path is clear for the new president-elect.
The states will all need to officially certify the vote. In the middle of a pandemic, almost 150 million Americans voted, and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will receive the most votes of any presidential ticket ever.
Senator Kamala Harris will be the first woman and the first woman of color to become vice president of the United States. President Trump garnered 5.5 million more votes than he did in 2020 than he did in 2016 and closed the gap in the final days after barnstorming the nation. Whether he chooses to concede or decides to wait until these legal challenges play out is yet to be seen.
This is a moment. This is a moment that had been a long time coming. Joe Biden running for president. This is his third time. The third time is the charm for former Vice President Joe Biden. 47th Vice President. He becomes the 46th president and now is president-elect. We begin with Bill Hemmer at the billboard once that is all officially certified. Bill.
Yeah, and a late good morning to both of you on this Saturday morning, just a tick before 11 o'clock or noon Eastern time. Joe Biden at 290, Donald Trump at 214. So what was breaking overnight? What has broken so far today? Not a lot in Nevada. I'll get to that in a moment, but some breaking here in Pennsylvania. With the vice president taking a half-point lead, 49.7 over 49.2 to Donald Trump. State law in Pennsylvania requires a recount if you're at 0.5% or less, and that's where we are. So perhaps you get a recount, maybe you do not if the lead for Joe Biden continues to grow. At daybreak earlier today, this marker right here, the difference, 34,458. At daybreak, that was 28,800. We just had another dump from Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's here in Allegheny County in the western part of the state. That was able to give Joe Biden more of an edge that he was looking for. He's been getting about 60% of that late mail ballot count, and he added to his numbers a short time ago. Here in Philadelphia, we'll see how this goes throughout the day. Guys, we've been talking for days now about how you win elections in Pennsylvania. If you're a Republican, you have to keep the margins lower in Philadelphia and lower in Pittsburgh. If you're a Democrat, you have to drive those numbers up. Joe Biden has done that in the year 2020. Philadelphia, these collar counties here, here's a very good example. Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Why is this so significant? It's a bellwether county. It's been razor tight for the past several elections. In fact, in 2016, here's where it was. Right on the margin, 0.5%. 2012, very close with Barack Obama on the ballot, about a point winner in that county. Now in 2020, you see what Joe Biden and the Democrats have done. They've increased his margins in locations like Bucks County, the suburbs just outside of Philadelphia. I'll pop around here to Montgomery County. You see the difference of the margin, 2-1 Biden over Trump. Chester County, similar, close, not as impressive as Montgomery, but still very good for the blue team. Delaware County, you see, meets his numbers yet again. Democrats knew if they were going to win Pennsylvania and its 20 electoral votes and take that state back from Donald Trump and the Republicans, this is where they were going to do it. And over here in in Pittsburgh. They were going to do there as well. There were 3 counties in Pennsylvania that Donald Trump flipped from Barack Obama's day in 2012 to 2016. Here on the map, they're barely perceptible. I want you to watch here, Northampton, and here and up in Erie County. Watch it now. In 2020, it is blue, and so is this. It's a blue-collar area right along Lake Erie. This was sought after by both campaigns, and at the moment, Joe Biden outperforming Donald Trump by a percentage point. That's not to say that the Republicans did not do well at finding their voters and turning them out. All over this map, you can find locations throughout the rural parts of Pennsylvania, and you can see where Republicans did very well in finding their voters, getting them to the polls or getting them to vote early. I think the significance of 2020, Brett and Martha, will be found in how the Democratic Party capitalized on mail-in ballots. They knew where their voters were. They got them through the post office. They got them through the mail, and they got them to return those ballots. That was an aggressive part of the DNC, and they were successful there in Pennsylvania. Quick look at Nevada. Again, it's still early out in Nevada. This is our starting number at 22,657. We have now called the 6 electoral votes for Nevada. Joe Biden holds a 2-point lead in the 6 electoral votes from Nevada, in combination with Pennsylvania, puts him over the top comfortably at 290. Brett, Martha?
Thank you, Bill. Bill Hemmer at the board.
We said from the beginning that Joe Biden as a candidate was not Hillary Clinton, and he is outperforming and will get the most votes and will become the 46th president of the United States. Please stay tuned to Fox News Channel and this Fox station for continuing coverage of this story. I'm Brett Baer with Martha McCallum in New York. All right, Bill, we were heading back. We were saying that Joe Biden is a different candidate. He managed to hold that blue wall, and he managed to do something Hillary Clinton could not, in part because that campaign he ran really dealt with not only the coronavirus, and we should point out the pandemic was a huge part of this race, but also that he ran on empathy and his life story. He's dealing with loss. His first wife and daughter killed in 1972. His son, Beau, killed in 2015. And he said character was on the ballot. And he seemed to touch some of those voters in those places that Hillary Clinton didn't.
One of the things that I just want to mention here is how different these 2 campaigns were. Joe Biden was criticized throughout the course of this campaign for campaigning from his basement. We were in the middle of COVID. His campaign recognized that in a way that was diametrically opposed to the way that the Trump team recognized that reality in the country. They drove their campaigns in hugely different ways. The president was barnstorming the country, packing in crowds at all of these rallies. And yet, it appears that one of the main themes here is that the American people, by this margin, wanted something calmer, something quieter, and something reassuring that Joe Biden was presenting to them in the course of this election. And Bill, you've been watching these counties. We know there's still a lot of outstanding vote. That's something that a lot of viewers are concerned about as they look at this board and they look at this call. What would you say?
I would say after you're at the moment where we are, we have millions and millions of votes already tallied. Martha, there may be changes at the edges, but not overall substantially. And Brett, you mentioned Joe Biden. 2 weeks from yesterday, he'll turn 78. When he's sworn in late January, he'll be a commander-in-chief at the age of 78, and he will have achieved something that he has sought back to from decades prior. He has tried to get this office numerous times, and this year he was successful in the upper Midwest. I would point to Wisconsin and Minnesota. Those are 2 states that Donald Trump won in 2016, stunned the Democratic Party, stunned Hillary Clinton. And now with Pennsylvania, you talk about the blue wall. This is the area they were trying to shore up, that area in the upper Midwest. Can we go back for a moment here and just think about where we have been over the past 10 months? I want to show you guys something here on the map. Here are the results from Iowa. In the first week of February, Joe Biden finished 4th in the Iowa caucus. That is remarkable.
New Hampshire is even more remarkable.
And I'm going to show you that in a moment here. You think about national politics, guys. How long we've been watching this. If you finish out of 3rd place in Iowa, Your campaign with a Republican and Democrat was dead in the water. And here's what happened, Brett. We went toward New Hampshire, and this was the result for Sanders over Buttigieg. Joe Biden finished 5th. He left the state before the votes were even tallied in the New Hampshire primary. Then we moved down toward the end of the month, and we went down here to South Carolina. This is pre-COVID times now, and this is what Joe Biden did to resurrect his campaign, keep it alive in 2020, and then go on to where he is tonight, the president-elect of the United States.
Thanks, Bill.
This is Bill Hemmer. Your thoughts as we've been getting more of this reaction
A number of things, too. Yeah, I mean, really, you get a lot of thoughts right now. We'll try and go through this together. And as you point out, Donald Trump got 70 million Americans to vote for him in 2020. And to Chris's point, he's not going away, and he has strong support still behind him. Guys, so many times in elections we talk about percentages. Can you get to 51 versus 49? Well, really, over the past several days now, we're talking about raw votes here. We're talking about really on a statewide level that oftentimes you would not even consider. And the voting margin here is something I want you to focus on here. I'm going to take you through Nevada, Arizona. I'm going to end up in Georgia. Tell you a little story right now about what we're seeing here, okay? The difference in the margin here was 25,000 votes for Joe Biden throughout the state of Nevada. All right, let me clear this off here and take you down. This is Las Vegas here. This is Reno up here. 3/4 of the population lives in Clark County. This is Las Vegas. So the margin here for Biden over Trump at the moment, again, it'll change a little bit here, but not substantially on a percentage basis, 80,798. In 2016, it was 81,000 in favor of Hillary Clinton. So Donald Trump and Republicans did better in raw votes now. That's the case I'm making it. Raw votes in terms of finding their voters in Nevada this year. Come down here to Arizona. A lot of consternation over the state. Why did we call it at 11:20 on Tuesday night for the 11 electoral votes in Arizona? This is Phoenix. This is Tucson. This is Maricopa County, where you find the majority of the population in Arizona. That's Phoenix and Maricopa County. Look at the difference here. All right, Joe Biden's picking up 46,000 over Donald Trump. In 2016, Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton with a difference of 41,000. We're talking 4,000 to 5,000 votes in the most heavily populated part of Arizona that made a difference ultimately. Now, I know our decision desks and a lot of election analysts, they were seeing the returns come in prior to Election Day in favor of Joe Biden. We can see that from the mail vote, and that is critical, too. I'll end on that point in a moment here. But if you went into Tuesday and you're trying to get all your voters to the polls, as Donald Trump and Republicans are trying to do, they managed to do that, and they were very successful at that. But the mail vote made a substantial difference in this election of 2020. You could almost make a case based on COVID and comparing this campaign to 4 years ago. It's not apples to apples. It was very different in a lot of these battleground states and how they conducted the vote. I'll come down here to Georgia. I was looking at this. This is Atlanta right here, all the metro counties. We've been over that time and time again. It was breaking for Joe Biden. Here was the difference when we went to bed last night, 7,200. Still a difference now. There will be a recount in Georgia after the 13th of November. Should take about a week's time. I think the 20th of November is when the state has to certify its vote. Again, I'm talking about raw numbers down here. This is Chatham County, Georgia. This is Savannah here, down along the coast. I want you to watch this, okay? Joe Biden is beating Donald Trump by almost 25,000 votes. Real vote totals. 8 years ago, an African-American president, Barack Obama, over Mitt Romney, had a difference of 13,000 votes in that county. Chatham County is about 54% African-American, about 38% white. In 2016, the margin's just slightly higher for Hillary Clinton. We're talking about 1,000 or 2,000 votes here and there as you poke around this map and find these critical spots. In the year 2020, with COVID raging and the Democratic Party pushing mail voting in a way they have never done before, Joe Biden popped up his difference by almost 25,000 votes in this county alone. Now, Trump did well. Back in 2016, he was at 43,000. This year, he's up to 53,000. But watch this number here. 4 years ago, Clinton's at 59,000. In 2020, Joe Biden increases that by almost 20,000 votes in one county, in one pocket of the Peach State, for a difference of 7,200 raw votes. Again, we're not talking about percentages anymore. We're talking about raw votes that made a difference in these, what now are battleground states. And Georgia has gone blue for the first time in 1992. And you're going to get two critical Senate elections on January 5th, a little less than 2 months from now. If you're running the Republican Party in Georgia, you got to get on the mail train if you want to have a chance. It is very important to get your voters to the polls.
That is a huge point.
And one in which you have to get on this idea.
Bill, I mean, one in which you wonder, when the president had weeks and weeks and weeks about going after the mail-in ballot system.
Entirely.
What happened to some of that Trump vote?
In my
conversation,
I apologize, Brett. In my conversations with those inside the campaign last weekend, into Monday, into Tuesday, they knew the returns that were coming in states like Michigan. They knew they were well behind going into Election Day. They also knew it was the same story here in Pennsylvania. They knew they had a ton of ground to make up. Their get out the vote operation, they relied on it, they were confident on it, and they did a very good job. If you're an incumbent president, you increase the vote tally in your favor over 4 years prior. It's a tough thing to do, and they did it. It's just that Joe Biden, the Democrats, did better. And you can point to mail-in voting. You can point to the message. You can point to the way that Joe Biden stayed home and put an emphasis on COVID. The pandemic's still out there, and it's going to still be there in January when you vote there in the state of Georgia.
Exactly.
But again, the point is, if this is the future for elections and voting in the United States of America, you either get on the train or you lose.
How the electorate lays out across this country, Bill, and where this victory by Joe Biden was put together piece by piece across America.
Thanks, Martha. Brett, good afternoon again. I'm going to show you how the map appears to be changing right now. As of 1 o'clock East Coast time, down here in Georgia, we're going to a recount. It's going to start in another week or so. The difference between Biden and Trump is 7,200. What if that holds? We know there are thousands of military ballots out there. We know there are thousands of provisional ballots out there. But really, when you look at history, a difference of 7,200 votes, oftentimes in these recounts, you get a difference of a couple hundred votes here or there. This would appear to be, unless it changes significantly, a tough thing to overcome. Here in North Carolina, Republicans still hold on the lead there. The president with the edge over Joe Biden, 76,000 the difference now in North Carolina. Why do I make this point? Let's say, for the sake of argument now, that Republicans hold North Carolina, they hold Alaska. They still count about half a vote in Alaska. We expect results sometime around Tuesday. They're telling us November 10th. And then if Joe Biden were to hang on to his lead here in Georgia, Georgia would go blue for the first time since 1992 in Bill Clinton. And what does that mean? And look at this map now. You get an immigrant population that's really moved into Atlanta over the past 15 to 20 years. There's a changing dynamic in the city of Atlanta and the surrounding suburbs. And down here in the Southwest, we were mentioning Arizona and the changing demographics, possibly of Phoenix, Arizona, people packing up and moving out of California, possibly going into areas of Maricopa County. Maybe that is the future for American politics, or maybe it's just a one-off now that we're looking at in 2020. Let me go back here and just fill this in, okay, guys? Sorry. This is the electoral output from 2016. Donald Trump won 306 electoral votes. Two faithless electors in Texas did not go, they broke away. Hillary Clinton had 232 electoral votes. 5 did not go her way. If I come back to the scenario that I was setting up for you, and Alaska goes Republican way, which we anticipate, if North Carolina stays the way it is, and Joe Biden hangs on to Georgia, look where we are 4 years later. Joe Biden's at 306, and Donald Trump is at 232. I'll leave you with one more point here. I know a lot of voices to get to. But I was talking about the vote margins here, not percentages now. We're talking about margins. 100 votes in this county, 1,000 votes over here. This is Pennsylvania. This is the map as it is right now. Pittsburgh, Allegheny out here. Philadelphia, the collar counties down here in the southeast. This is Somerset County, Pennsylvania. This is white. It's rural. It's where United Airlines Flight 93 went down on 9/11 some 20 years ago. This is the difference in the vote, and I would encourage folks at home just to keep your eye on this number here for the president. That's 31,105 raw votes this year. This is the difference in the county between Trump and Biden. He picked up 22,562 votes. Go back 4 years ago. You're at 27,347, 19,980. Come to 2020, he upped his margin by about 2,500. As an incumbent, you're out there, you're doing rallies, you're trying to get your folks to the polls, you're trying to keep their support and build on that. Donald Trump and the Republican Party did that in 2020. It's just that in the population center, fewer people live in Somerset County. In the population centers of Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, and to a lesser degree up here in Erie, PA, the Democrats in 2020 did better. Brett, Martha.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, Bill, thank you. Just moments ago, former Florida governor, former presidential candidate Jeb Bush, saying congratulations to President-elect Biden. I have prayed for our president most of my adult life. I will be praying for you and your success. Now is the time to heal deep wounds. Many are counting on you to lead the way. Let's bring in now, as we look live in New York City there, Arnon Mishkin, director of the Fox News Decision Desk. First of all, Arnon, let me say, and Martha will say this as well, thank you to you and your team for working throughout many, many hours under amazing pressure to do what you did, and the projections that we made when we made them.
The team feels very good about it.
The 30,000-foot view, what does this election say about the electorate? What do you learn from this?
There are a couple of things. First and foremost, the Republican candidate for president lost on Tuesday, but I'm not certain the Republican Party was as hurt by this election as you generally are speaking hurt by a presidential loss. In fact, in many respects, it seems to me that the Republican Party is well positioned for a post-Trump era. I thought there were a number of interesting things. First, they're very close to holding on to the Senate. In all likelihood, I think if I'm a betting man, I'd say I'd rather be Mitch McConnell tonight than Chuck Schumer this morning, in terms of who's going to be in control of the Senate next year. They have a good chance of controlling the Senate. They're not going to control the House. Our model definitely projects they're not going to control the House. They will, however, it seems right now, win a number of seats. So they may be well positioned in the House for 2022 in terms of when there's going to be a midterm election where generally the White House party loses seats in the House. So they're well positioned in that respect. I think if you look at the Fox News voter analysis, the results there, we see that, yes, they've had losses particularly amongst suburban women, but there have also been indications that that they're doing better, particularly amongst Hispanics, amongst minority groups, than they have done historically. So they definitely had gains amongst Hispanic voters, and that's helped them enormously, both in Florida and in Texas. So I think that they are well-positioned, surprisingly well-positioned for a party that you thought was going to suffer because of the loss of Donald Trump. And the third thing I'd say is that the election sort of proves that the way America votes changes the dynamic of the way we watch elections. And I think we saw that on election night, where at the beginning of the election night, it looked like the president did extremely well, much better than any analyst had anticipated, in terms of easily winning Florida, Ohio, and Texas. And only later in the evening and towards the next day did you realize actually that, yes, it was not a blue wave, but there was what we call a blue undertow. That blew, but the undertow, sorry.
You've been up for a long time.
But there was a blue undertow in terms of how the vote was coming later on, and that enabled the former vice president to sort of win sufficient number of states and to get to over 270 electoral votes and become president-elect.
And Arnon, in all of our meetings, you talked about the fact that there would be likely that division in how this vote came in, based on the fact that there were so many mail-in ballots and that so many of them were likely to come on the Democrat side because of the way they had made that direct pitch to their voters to vote that way. It is unique. I mean, just in the big picture, do you have any thoughts on this concentration that we see in the cities and the way that this played out and these legal challenges that are that are underway. Is there anything in the dynamic that you see that looks different, that stands out to you, that we should know?
I think there's there's an enormous dynamic in terms of how Democrats voted by mail or early and Republicans voted in person. I don't know if that's going to stay, because I think one of the things that happened this year was the president was telling his voters, don't vote by mail. I think what we're going to see in the future is that the vote by mail is not, which was unique because of the pandemic. I think that's going to only continue. And once you've voted by mail once, you're going to want to vote by mail or that convenient method again. So I think we're going to see that. I don't think we'll see the kind of split in terms of mail-in voters being Democratic and in-person voters being Republican. I do think we will continue to see an enormous urban-rural split, where urban areas will continue to be sort of blue and rural areas will continue to be red for at least the next few cycles, or at least the next cycle through 2024.
Arnon, last thing, what is your view on the state of the polling industry in America?
I think this is good. I want to see, first of all, when the final votes are counted, how off the polls were. And then the second thing I want to see is what exactly was the impact of President Trump being on the ballot. Because I think that having such a president who clearly has a very strong persona, much stronger a persona and ability to sort of command attention than presidents in my experience have been able to have. I think that had a unique impact. I think when you dig down...
Did you see a shy Trump voter?
I don't know if it's a shy Trump voter. I think what happened in the end was that a lot of the polls were counting sort of people who were sort of voting for the Libertarian and the others, and a lot of those people who didn't like Donald Trump and weren't going to say they were going to vote for Donald Trump, in the end they held their nose and they went home to the Republican Party. And so I think that's why the Republicans are, frankly, pretty well positioned for a party that just lost the presidential election.
Arnon, once again, thank you to you and your team.
Thank you for having us.
We appreciate it.
And I want to
thank you so much, Arnon, to you and everybody else.
Breaking news right now. So the Associated Press and Fox News are both calling Alaska for President Trump, and Democrats Republican Dan Sullivan wins re-election in the U.S. Senate from Alaska. So a lot going on up in that state today.
A Fox News alert now. The Associated Press is projecting that President Trump has won North Carolina, scooping up its 15 electoral votes. Mark Meredith is live in Raleigh for us. That's a big win for the president, one that we expected, but it's official now.